This is showing who's all here. We're missing one counselor, Counselor Gary. Everybody else is here, so that's good news. Open forum is now. If anyone has anything they'd like to address the council with, this is the time. If you're not on the agenda, if you're on the agenda, you'll have your opportunity. Anyone? Yeah.
Thank you.
Tell us who you are. And
I will. Hello, I'm Linda Jurek. I'm the Executive Director of Visit Cook County, our destination marketing organization, as well as the Cook County Chamber of Commerce. And I'm here to talk to you all tonight just about embracing our tourism community and the small business entrepreneur that inherently exists in every small town with an economy like ours. I'm concerned about a lack of support from leaders within our city, and I have myself witnessed and felt this can't-do attitude. Personally, I've tried to work through everything from event planning, permitting, garbage can lids, the new art on the can, snow plowing, lawn mowing, alleyway improvements, and a supportive attitude is oftentimes lacking from our city staff, and that to me is very worrisome. The most recent issue that floated across my desk was from Jill Terrell of Joint Company. We are all aware that she has hosted Christina and the Bad Seed food truck in her alleyway backyard. She is unable to do that this summer, and we should all be aware that community member and business owner Christina provided a dining opportunity through a crunch of visitors during the summers of 21 and 22. She also provided us with dining options over the course of the winter. She came before the council at your last meeting looking for direction. Our most prominent experience with food trucks is that, in my opinion, of the Fisherman's Picnic, with trucks plugging into Wisconsin street power sources, blowing fuses, etc. I know that because I've had to replug some of them. Food trucks are just that. They are food trucks. They are self-contained and rely on their own power in most settings. Our Fisherman's Picnic experience should not be the measurement of welcoming food trucks into our community. Some of the information that I've heard is secondhand, but I've heard it more than once. Christina and others have been told by city leaders that they are not wanted, they're not welcome. They are viewed as competitors to other dining establishments, and that they are getting a screaming deal because they do not have the cost associated with bricks and mortar. More than one restaurant owner that I talked to mentioned that food trucks cannot possibly compete to the level of bricks and mortar because of just that. They own a truck, not a building. They are unable to provide the same amount of service and experience that a restaurant can provide. I've heard that Christina and others have been told that food trucks are not welcome, and I'm here just to state some facts. And this is just from the food experience in our community, which is what I'm really concerned with. During last summer, I heard from many, many visitors that there is no place to eat. So during the summer of 2020, I conducted an informal survey regarding the sentiment toward food trucks, and it was a mix of reaction, most likely due to the uncertainties of COVID and what was coming before us. At my recent visit to City Hall, when advocating for the Bad Seed, I asked the city if dining properties could be contacted, and I got the kind of usual shoulder shrug and that's not my job response. Therefore, the team at Visit Cook County conducted another survey just in the last 2 days and contacted 12 dining businesses, owners, and operators. The list includes the Birch Terrace, Blue Water Cafe, Dairy Queen, Fisherman's Daughter, Gunflint Tavern, Hungry Hippie Tacos, Java Moose, My Sister's Place, Subway, Sydney's, Voyager Brewing Company, and Whole Foods Co-op. Not one of these businesses opposes food trucks, not one. They all support a community member, an entrepreneur, and a business owner, and many offered suggested locations, including the area Christina mentioned near the parking lot at Coast Guard Point, the City Hall parking lot by the co-op, the City Hall parking lot adjacent to City Hall and near the grassy area. A number of the restaurant owners feel that a limit should be established and a fee should be in place, and a policy should also be established. However, a community business owner should be allowed and encouraged to operate in Grand Marais. I also promised to mention that outdoor sidewalk dining should also be considered for those establishments that cannot expand services onto adjacent land near their property. I would like to encourage the City Council to press administration and legal counsel to do their homework and come to you with solutions based on fact. And I'm happy to share the results of the survey conducted by the team at Visit Cook County. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Linda. I think it'd be really helpful to see the comments that people had.
I have copies for all of you.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Did you get a copy of our agenda?
I did.
Okay.
I mean, I saw that you were addressing it tonight. And I knew that there was some homework that was to be done, so you did it.
Did you see the?
Well, do you see that?
Did you see the
Solution.
Winona ordinance that was in there?
Oh, look.
Okay. Anyone else for open forum?
I do.
All right. Tell us who you are.
I'm not going to be able to tell how wonderful Linda talked here, but I'm Pat Campanero. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today. I too have, you want to pass these around? I too have copies of my presentation, and I am here tonight also to ask you to grant Christina Conroy and the Bad Seed Food Truck a one-year seasonal permit to operate her truck at Artist Point. After listening to the discussion at the last council meeting, I wasn't here, but I did do your live stream, I understand and appreciate the council's concern regarding setting a precedent without adequate time to study an issue. As your attorney noted, and I can attest, the food truck business is undoubtedly a growth industry. Although I'm not currently working with any business owners to put a truck on the street this season, beside Christina, I have had 3 different parties approach me with business plans for food trucks prior to the pandemic. All of them want to operate here. I'm sure they will be back, so I urge you to define your process. As you know, Christina is a Grand Marais resident and homeowner. She has children in our schools and employs 2 other working mothers full-time. She purchased her truck as the pandemic hit. This severely affected her ability to see the full return on this investment. Denying her a one-time seasonal permit will affect her ability to provide for her family, pay her taxes, and meet her other financial obligations. It will also deprive our seasonal visitors of some pretty tasty food. As we ramp up for what I believe will be a very busy tourist season, offering our guests another food option during this very busy lunch and dinner hour will give our economy a boost, allowing people to remain here in town rather than searching for food somewhere else. I also believe that competition is healthy and drives all businesses to offer better products and services. The pandemic has fundamentally changed consumer behavior, and many visitors will appreciate an opportunity to avoid crowds and still be able to feed their family by using the Bad Seed Food Truck. Christina is requesting a one-year seasonal permit while you study this issue. She has obtained all of the necessary documents and permits required to operate a truck, and I urge you to work with her to provide not only for her and her employees' families, but also provide our visitors with one more food choice on busy summer days. I can assure you Christina is prepared to obtain the necessary permits that you request and follow the directions that you decide is necessary. I'm also committed to helping her succeed. Does anyone have any questions for me? As you know, small business is my life, and I believe Christina is providing a very valuable service to this community. Thanks.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Going once, going twice? All right, we'll close the open forum. Thank you for sharing, you guys. And we'll move on to the consent agenda. So the consent agenda has the typical 3 items on it. This meeting's agenda, the previous meeting minutes, and the payment of bills. Also has a 4th item, which is Le Grand du Nord street use. This is was added to the agenda after we realized at the last meeting that that it didn't make the agenda, and it was something that I received word of in February 15th, and so that communication was included in your packet here. We can pull it for discussion. He's asking for the same thing that's been done in the past, the closure of 3rd Avenue and provision of barriers. And if we need to pull it and talk about it, we certainly can. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to pass the consent agenda as presented, approved as presented.
I'd make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
All right, is there a motion? There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
No, not for me, for once.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, consent agenda passes. We're good. Moving right along, we're gonna move along in our agenda here. Street sweeping. So we had some messages from community members in regards to street sweeping, asking about whether or not they can put stuff in the gutter and have the street sweeper pick it up. And we got a couple of messages in our packet here from Lenny Bloomquist, who is our property maintenance supervisor, and also from the Soil and Water Conservation District here in the county. And to summarize, what Lenny says is that, like, pinpointing when he's going to be in a particular place to do a particular thing is going to be pretty tricky, damn near impossible. And then what Elena says in the Soil and Water Conservation memo is basically, it's not a good idea to put stuff in the street anyway, because that stuff ends up in Lake Superior, ends up clogging up our catchment basins and our storm sewer. And when I was talking with Robbie about this, county engineer, he said, well, it's also illegal. So there's that. So do we want to have more discussion on the
Kind
street
of.
sweeper?
I'm
Okay.
a little confused.
Go for it.
Sand and salt, I'm assuming, got there because of city putting it down, and now it's on their grass, but they can't, and if it's still on the street, somehow it's okay to clean it, but if the city owner says, great, it's on my grass, and now I'm putting it back on the street, that's not okay?
I think the issue probably is, how do you get sand? I mean, the salt's dissolved, that's already gone. So how do you get sand though, right?
I was just, maybe that's the wrong assumption, but I thought that was Josh's issue.
That was, I think, the issue.
The issue, and so if just because it's still sitting on the street, oh boy, it's too many S's, street sweeper, it's okay to clean it up, but if it's still sitting in the grass, then it's not okay to clean it up. Am I missing this as being?
I think it's
Good.
transporting it from the yard, right?
But we put
into-
it in their yard.
Right.
So can't we, if they want some options to get it back on the street so it can get carried away, that's not okay? Are then they somehow responsible for what the city, which I'm assuming is because you've pushed the snow up and it's in the snow sometimes and then it melts and it sits there like everywhere else that this occurs?
Yeah.
Like my plower does with the rocks that I had to go rake out of the neighbor's yard?
I'm assuming it's very similar to that, yes.
Yeah.
And I don't have much of an answer for that. I mean, I don't know what the legality and what the reasons for all of those different rules are. I do understand what Lenny and Elena wrote very plainly, you know, that all the stuff's gotta end up somewhere, and and understanding when our guys are gonna get the street sweeper out and get it out there. You know, I mean, they do that really early in the morning, and they do it in opportunities when they can.
Yeah,
So I don't
see-
know.
I
It
s-
seems hard to plan.
I see that as two separate things.
Mm-hmm.
Planning, fine, even if it's a range, we could certainly post a range out, you know, hey, we're gonna start by this date, and it takes us this long, if that's the starting point. I mean, it doesn't have to be, it's gonna be tomorrow at 6:00, but we should be able to give some kind of heads up, right?
Well, we have to look at the purpose of why we would tell people that, though.
Right, I mean,
because if-
but you said there were two, so I'm just saying there's two things at work here. And if we are gonna do that, that's what it is. But the second part is, the logic here isn't adding up for me. Granted, we're not here to like, oh, you got a bunch of crap in your yard, just dump it and the city will take care of it for you in the street. But I get Josh's point, if we put it there in an effort to keep our streets, drivable in the wintertime.
Yeah, it seems like it's a service, like a winter service impacting a summer thing.
Well, yeah, even if there was, I just think that idea that there's a range of time, if he's saying it's from April 1st to the 30th, or, you know, that's what it takes to do 2 weeks worth of work because of equipment issues and or weather or whatever, or other needs, you wouldn't want to have everybody raking out the sand out of their yard and putting it into the street, because if it's gonna take them 2 weeks to a month to get there and it rains, then all that is, to Elena's point, is basically ending up in the harbor and ending up in the, ending up in the lake, so.
Chris, are we missing something really easy here? As far as like putting stuff in the street like that and legality of such, or?
It's whatever's in your city code, you should follow.
I guess I don't know what's in the city code.
Well, you get to write that, so you can,
So in other words, it's not in there.
Is it not in there? Not
no,
there?
it's in there, but you get to decide what you want it to say too.
And it says what now?
It says you can't put
You
stuff
can't
in the.
deposit things in the street.
And it's, I mean, for me too, in order to change that, I would need to hear a lot. I would need to hear different stuff than what we just heard, like from Elena about the water quality concerns and
Well,
also just gunking up our system. But
well, and
it's-
I get what you guys are saying, but the reason the street sweeper is coming by now is it's already there, and for that month, it could get washed away. Not forgetting anything I take off my yard and add to it, but it's already happening.
So if we're gonna do that, then if we're gonna have that take on this, then we have to take a look at the code and we have to rewrite that. It says it's okay to put stuff in the street from X date as long as the street sweeper is coming through, or something like that. Because otherwise, just opening the can to say like you can
Yeah.
put stuff in the street I'm not willing to do that.
Right, for a month, that doesn't make sense. I get that. But I kind of get his point too. I mean, it's his yard and all of a sudden
I get it.
and then, or are we just all individually responsible for that? Sort of like the old sidewalk shovel thing. It's the city's sidewalk, but you're responsible for your section in most cities, which never goes well.
People don't like being told what to do. Yeah.
Well, or it just doesn't.
So what do we want to? Which direction we want to take with this? Do we want to just take the comments that we've heard and keep thinking about it? Do we want to take a look at what the actual language in the city code looks like, so that we know what it says, and take a look at changing it, or how do we want to move forward with this?
I don't think city staff would think that was a good idea, as far as maintenance on the equipment goes. And I don't feel like Soil and Water, who we work with on all of our stormwater issues, would feel too strongly if we were to revisit that and have this window of time, because inevitably it's going to get abused, right? And so either then somebody does throw a bunch of debris and there's a bunch of branches and there's a bunch of stuff, so they just skip that whole section instead of possibly clogging up their machine. Well, then what? No, that's just going to end up in the, I don't know. I mean, I guess we live in, I don't think it's, I think we listened to the two people that we sought feedback from and listened to that, and I think that's just what it is. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess I certainly noticed sand in my yard, after the winter time, but you rake your yard, even if you rake it towards into your yard, it's sand, it disappears, and I mean, the salt's already gone in, I don't know. But the idea of sweeping it into the street seems like a terrible, maybe idea, and a terrible, because then maybe instead of it taking 10 to 15 days to complete, it's going to take them 20 to 30 days to complete, because now they're dealing with all kinds of issues.
Yeah.
It's hard, and if someone did something, like you said, took advantage of it with
Which
stuff,
will happen.
you'd never know where it came from.
Yeah.
So it'd be
Well,
just
you
like a lot
kind
of
of.
stuff.
I mean, if it's in front of somebody's house, you can take a pretty good guess probably. But I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Like,
I'm not going to rake my stuff in front of my neighbor's house or something.
whatever. No, that's fine. I just want to know which way we're going, because I kind of get that point. Like, okay, I've got crap in my yard, but then we take it like snow plowing. Well, it's my job then, as part of here to clean it up. Then I don't.
Yeah.
I just want to know. Do we get any other comments from anybody? Anyone else?
I always
Okay.
think of it as it's if there's yeah.
Is there anybody else you want to hear from?
Not in particular, I just didn't know if this drummed up any other, homeowners' thoughts at all. or
We didn't get anything
businesses or
else, did we?
whatever. Okay.
No.
Well, but the only comment I have is we had an exceptional snow year this year, which was a lot of plowing just about every other day, which means a lot of sanding just about every other day, all winter long. So I think we have a abnormal amount of sand. I know I do in my yard on 8th Avenue all the way down to where the sign is that intersects, what street is that? There's no road through there,
Second
but
Street.
that whole pavilion area is nothing but solid sand. The grass is completely covered up. But, I mean, I raked mine last sunny day we had 3 days ago, and I just swept it into a garbage can and hauled it back in the woods that I have and dumped it in the woods.
Just
No.
save it until next year, and you just.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I do see maybe some people's yards in certain areas might got more sand than other people, depending on exactly where they are, on what road they're on, because he's on Broadway, and Broadway's always the first one that gets,
It gets hammered multiple times, too.
yeah, it's
you
the
know.
first one that gets plowed, it's the first one that gets sand, and it probably gets sanded more than other roads we have. Same with the 8th. But, maybe, I know when Lenny runs the street sweeper in the first part of the season to clean up the streets, he kind of waits and waits and waits because you never know when we're going to have the next last snowfall. But when he does clean it up, he's always going around cars that are in his way. And I noticed that, a couple days later, he goes back and redoes that street because he knows he's missed some sections because of cars in his way. And he eventually, after like 30 days, he gets the town done. But, maybe if we have abnormal areas that gets too much sand, there's a way to help out a particular homeowner if we, see that there's a big bunch of sand in a certain area that is kind of not normal, that we can maybe offer some kind of assistance, and maybe they sweep it and clean it, but maybe they can put it in a pail or something and we can come and get it and haul it away. I don't know. I'm just trying to think. This isn't going to be something that's going to happen for every homeowner.
Right.
But, there's a lot of sand on some of the corners. I noticed that right now. Still is. There's still sand along the curbs downtown Grand Marais,
Right.
from last winter. But
And that's something too.
I'm not trying to say we're gonna go clean up everybody's yards, but I'm saying that maybe certain people, depending on where they lived, might have been hit excessively, since we have basically one person talking about this right now. I haven't heard anything from anybody else.
Right.
Um,
Well, I think, when Josh brought it up, I think, and I don't want to put words into his mouth, but when I read his message, it sounded kind of like he was asking for it as a courtesy,
Yeah.
just as like a courtesy of like, oh, this is something that there's a simple solution to, in his mind, of putting it in the
Right.
street, and then don't have to worry about it, because the street sweeper's gonna take that anyway.
Right. Like he
And-
saw the street sweeper go by and he's thinking, oh man, I could have cleaned up my yard. Was he coming back? And
Yeah, and that's,
and I get
and
that.
that kind of a thing, that kind of a, I don't think the city is interested in offering that kind of a service, for the reasons that Lenny put in here, and also
Right.
just because of timing and coordination and such. But I understand where he's coming from with the, with his request. For me, where I'm stuck is I'm stuck that our code says no. So if we're gonna even have this conversation, we need to look at the code first.
Yeah.
And figure out that. And if the council wants to do that, we can put that on a future agenda. If the council doesn't wanna do that, then I think we can say, like, oh, well, it's kinda your thing.
Yeah,
Which-
whichever we want to do.
Well, if people want to clean up their own yards and sweep up their sand and put it somewhere, I mean, do we have, like, I have
Like a
extra,
deposit.
I have extra lots by my house. I can get rid of it, but some people may not.
Right. They have
So
like a
can we
deposit
give them a
for that.
place to dump this bucket of sand or garbage can of sand? Or, I mean, we take this sand and dump it somewhere, don't we? Out of the street sweeper?
We have to.
Yeah.
We have to, right? We store it, maybe we reuse it, I don't know, but I'm just, if people want to get rid of it somewhere, we can offer them a place to,
Sure, leave
To
it.
dump it.
yeah, and it's only sand. I'm not talking about leaves and brush and branches and trees. I'm talking about sand. I mean, you know, that's kind of the problem here, I think,
Yeah.
is,
Well, and, you know, with the county's pits and stuff like that, they're not allowing any kind of access for use like that anymore.
yeah, well,
So
I know,
it's
I'm
a-
just trying to,
I don't know where we put our stuff, but probably don't need to know right now.
Yeah.
That does though bring up the other point that that's inefficient of his time to have to come back because a car was there. It would be nice to notice, just like our snow plowing.
street
that-
sweeping.
Yeah, that, you know.
odd
I don't
even
know if
day
you
thing.
do
Odd
like-
even? Be
Yeah.
sweet if we
Yeah.
Well,
extend that a
it
little
would
bit.
probably help him out,
Mhm.
because I noticed there's a lot of missed spots when he first starts, and then he has to come back and,
Yeah.
Yeah, they had missed spots because of snow too.
yeah.
This
right.
year.
Yeah.
But most years not. But I think that would be a good thing to post. It's commonly done other places. Either, I know it'd be hard to post all of our streets, but we could do it in other means like we do for this.
You could just
Snow
extend the winter snow thing by 2 weeks and have it cover all of April
Right,
as an idea.
yep.
Do we
Yeah.
get signs
I
made?
mean, it's not, trying to codify what the schedule for street sweeping is gonna be really not doable.
He just,
Changes from year to
Totally
year.
weather dependent.
He does it when he
and
can.
varies a lot.
around rain.
But
and-
that's not to say we can't talk about when we're gonna do street sweeping, but I think you need to start with the question of, do you want to encourage people to put stuff in the street, or you wanna make it clear that they can't? Because that needs to be part of the communication.
Personally, I'm pretty concerned about making the statement of saying it's okay to put stuff in the street. I feel like we should say that you can't do that. I think the communication should be pretty clear that that's not allowed. So that's where I'm coming on it.
And we can talk about options for dump places for folks, but think about the county's recycling center facility and how that they deal with that and the difficulties that they have as well about what's brought there.
Moving with the yard waste stuff.
And the reuse center and the recycle center and the piles of stuff that show up. And I'd expect similar behavior. I mean, we've had the same when we've had yard waste that we've allowed to be dumped on burn piles in the past, and boy, you just get everything. So if we're willing to make that a service we're offering, we have to just recognize that's gonna be a part of it. We're gonna get trash, we're gonna get everything.
So, what do we want to think about here, folks? I've said what I think. I mean, we can just take the recommendations that are given to us and say, well, this is pretty good. If we want to look at a place for people to put stuff, yes, we can certainly look at that as well. To me, the big question is, do we want to like to edify what the code says right now? Do we want to take a look at the code? And if we're going to agree with what the code says and reinforce that, then are we going to take a look at a place for people to put sand, that sort of thing? So those are a couple of different avenues we can take with conversation on this. I think we should take a look at one of those, whichever one feels the best for all of us, and then we can move on that once we gather more information.
Well, I think we can follow our code, but I also think that we've had one person request some kind of service. That's one person out of the whole city. And I think on an individual basis, I don't see an issue with maybe trying to deal with that one situation. I mean, I don't know what he ultimately has done with his yard right now, if anything.
Well, I can follow up with Josh. And,
Yeah, I'm just asking.
and ask him how it goes and see
Yeah.
if maybe he wants to be a part of, some kind of a solution for that.
Right.
But if we do that, then, and take the recommendations of our experts, listen to our code, and then I think that we probably have addressed the situation as thoroughly as we can for this year. And then if it keeps coming up, then of course we have other work to do.
Right.
I'm fine with that. I really thought of it as sand, not everything in his mother's uncle would get swept into the street. And I agree that
It
that's
would be lovely
not-
if it was just that.
Yeah, we certainly don't want that. which I don't think is what Josh is thinking either. That said, I think we could make a bigger effort, though, to make it more efficient for Lenny as far as making one sweep pass, not having to come back if somebody's car was parked there.
And you're saying by like communicating to the
Yeah, we
public
can put a
when we're
little bit
actually
more
gonna
effort
start.
to figure out how we can communicate that and figure out some flexibility that applies for that year. He has to have some planning in mind. He can't wake up one day and just say, today I'm gonna start cleaning streets. So there's some thought going on here, and we can add that as part of what happens when that decision is made, that now we're ready to clean streets. We can have a communication plan ready to go.
Yeah.
If simply extending the time of the street thing doesn't make sense, we can put a little effort into something that would.
Put it out in the utility bills when it looks like spring is actually coming.
It's like,
You know, the
keep
month
your eyes
before,
open,
the
we're
month
gonna be
before.
sleeping. Yeah, I mean, I
mean-
think there's, that does, I think that does warrant looking into, and could be something we pilot next year, with various, like, I mean, Patrick's done a really good job of having different ways of communicating with the community that I think a lot of people are listening to. So we could utilize some of those and say out like, hey, things that are happening, this is gonna start happening pretty soon.
We
So
have
park on
is
one side
a
or,
lot of solid ways to communicate in this community between paper, newspaper, radio. We've got a lot of ways, social media. There's no reason we can't get to people in a fairly flexible manner.
okay, so take a look at that, otherwise move on. I'll follow up with Josh, see what we can chat about. Okay.
Fine with me, thank you.
Great. So moving on the agenda, we've got Robbie and Andrea, you guys are up. So we're going to talk about safe route to school, multi-use path, Highway 61 to County Road 7. So I'll let you guys give your summary, and then we'll move ahead.
Awesome, thanks. I think this is my first city council meeting, so it's kind of neat.
That's right.
I dig it.
It's different than a commissioner's meeting.
It's a little different, yeah. It's colder in here, I will say that. There, that's my dig. Like, temperature-wise, the attitude is great.
We're efficient. We're just efficient.
I worked with Andrea on this project a little bit, right when I got here. And so what this is a safe routes to school multi-use trail. And it's going to be located on the west side of the Gunflint Trail in between Highway 61 and County Road 7. So it'll go past Steve Sports and Great Expectations right there. This project is funded through a Safe Routes to School grant. In addition to our we get annual municipal state aid funds every single year. And so, so between those two, that's what funds the project. It's 10-foot wide paved trail. The intent was to allow, the kids to walk and bike on it. I know when you look at the Grand Marais pedestrian plan along with the then adopted Cook County pedestrian plan, both of those, it's the exact same one, and this fits within that. And so part of the project delivery was getting a resolution not only from the county in support of this project, but also from the city of Grand Marais. And so that's why I'm here, and I'm happy to answer any questions about it.
Now the funds for this we got those quite a few years ago, didn't it? It was like 5 years ago or something?
This has been in process for a long time, and it was gonna be built last summer, but there was some right-of-way discussions with Great Expectations, and the possibility of including some different construction. So we put it off until this current summer. And typically, when we apply for the grant, we would have requested support from the council. So that, I was just telling Robbie that might actually already exist somewhere, but we need it now.
It's been a while. To be honest, I couldn't find it.
Yeah,
And-
so this
so-
has been, it was already in process when I started as a ship coordinator, so that would have been about 4 years ago.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
Because I know Maren worked on that
Yeah.
when she was still here.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I mean, I do think that we talked about that. I'm not sure that we voted to have some kind of support for it, but we definitely talked about it. So it's great to see this finally coming to fruition. You talking about summer 2022?
This
Or-
summer, yeah.
Okay.
And so we're in the final stages. It's a later bid than I wanted, but it's a small project, and so it shouldn't affect the cost too much. But like I said, it's completely our side of things. Grand Marais has no financial input, I guess, in this project. So obviously, whatever the cost of the project is completely covered by the county. Yeah.
Yep, and the resolution that's in the packet, 2022-09, basically states such. The resolution is basically just to allow the project to happen within the city limits. So, does anybody have any questions about the project itself?
You should just keep it going right up past 7 all the way around.
Well, we tried.
We tried. That was, well, a different grant. I actually applied for it, and I think I missed it by like a point or two. So that would have been, I know, we were close. It's fine. And so it's through the TA program, is a different transportation alternative program. It's an annual solicitation that comes up, and yeah, I think projects that were tied to the Gitchigami got a little more favorable. I'll throw them under the bus.
That's fine.
That's okay. Yeah. No, so we're gonna apply for again, but that is something long term I really would like, is just like you said, continue it up around 7, and then for us, my thought with that project is the side tangent is come back down 5th in front of the recycling center and just connect everything there.
It's cool.
Yeah. So hopefully next year we'll apply again, see what comes out of it. But yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So this is actually a county trail when it's all done to maintain and keep up?
Yes, that we can add that to the long list of discussions about city and county partnerships and who does
Okay.
what's and.
Also, I was gonna ask, like, winter plowing would be the.
Sure. I mean, it would be plowed, and I think for now, it's safe to say, I think that's something that we would be able to do. But again, long-term, I know that it's not just highway department and city things. I know there's a lot that goes into that, so we'll just keep it to the trail at least for now. Yeah, but I think that's something we would maintain. So I've gotten questions regarding, snowmobile traffic has come up before. That's not the intent of this. This is for kids. This is for pedestrians.
They use the other side of the.
I think
Right.
correct. I think
Yeah.
they use that
Then they
anyway.
come across.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So they're going, were you saying, Craig, they go on the right-hand side?
Well, they come across, but then we theoretically aren't maintaining the sidewalk on the north side of Highway 61. We are going to plow the new bike path sidewalk on the south side of the highway, and that was for snowmobiles to cross and drive on. So now, with this walking to
Mhm.
safe routes to school kind of thing, if that's gonna be plowed all winter,
Mhm.
the piece that abuts that by Highway 61 isn't
Okay.
currently.
The north side. Oh, okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Where that comes down and
The
meets Highway
corner?
61?
Like where we tie
From,
in.
from
Right.
Steve's down 61.
Yeah.
That's, and I think that that's gonna be a conversation that has to happen again anyway.
I mean, it's hard packed and packed down by snowmobiles, but I'm just trying to figure out, are we gonna flip-flop this thing and change it? Then if we are, we might have some issues with grooming equipment fitting through certain areas on the south side of the highway versus the north side of the highway, so then we're back down
Yeah.
talking, readjusting.
The Safe Routes to School trail won't affect the snowmobile traffic, and where the snowmobile traffic goes, and that conversation that has been, you guys have talked about that a few times in the past few months. So, like, the Safe Routes to School trail won't affect that conversation or situation at all.
No, I understand that, but what I'm saying is your trail is gonna abut to a trail that we don't maintain in the wintertime.
Right, but there's a crosswalk there,
Yeah.
right?
Correct,
The
and they could-
sidewalk.
To where we do.
To what is
maintain.
So
maintained.
we do maintain, or we,
Yeah, but
The proverbial.
when you
The
come down to
proverbial
that sidewalk
things.
to walk east, that sidewalk's not plowed.
East.
Or west?
West, I mean, when you walk
So,
west.
I mean, once they get
Directly
there,
attached.
Right.
There's
Correct,
no walking,
Right.
so to
Correct.
speak, as far as a plowed
like on the
sidewalk.
corner?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
right in front of Steve's.
Right yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, they don't plow. So we're connecting to a trail that isn't plowed, currently plowed.
In the wintertime.
In the
Right,
winter
So
time.
it's
Kinda like
just
the-
that tiny, or that corner spot that we're talking about, where the kids would
Yes.
wanna cross the crosswalk and the snowmobiles would wanna cross over.
Correct.
They would need the snow and the kids would not want snow?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Well,
And
of case.
the irony of this is that when we first started talking about this 4 or 5 years ago, or however long it was, the discussion was had about which side of the road it should go on, et cetera, et cetera. And And it was concluded very quickly in conversation that it had to be on the west side of County Road 7 because the other side of County Road 7, the east side of County Road 7, is so heavily used by ATVs and by snowmobiles in the winter. So that was, I remember having that conversation, and it seems like, you know, the plans that we're presented with are plans that have been vetted, and that if we need to monkey with our winter plowing to make sure that the kids can get to school, I think that's fine. I think we can figure that out. And definitely when there isn't snow, it's going to be an incredible asset to have, for the kids not have to walk in the street or walk on the grass. And also, I like what they did with some of the riprap and some of the drainage improvements too, so that's definitely a pro.
Do you think we'll need to put any kind of signage up? Will snowmobilers be confused and try to utilize it?
I don't think so. I
There's
mean,
no snow on it?
If you
There's
want
no
to
snow
grind
on
down
it.
your carbides, sure.
Yeah.
Well,
You could always put in no
sometimes sidewalks
snowmobile
are
sign
not
and make sure
totally
they cross the
bare.
highway to get on the trail they're
Yeah.
supposed to be
pretty
on.
close.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
And
But
sometimes they're on them anyways,
That's a good point.
right around
Well,
these
just
solves.
I
make
think
sure they
either way,
cross.
either way we look at it, we're going to have a conversation about that this fall.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be
So-
great, should you have some
We should
signage
probably
just to,
consider
you know,
signage on the
Can't
bottom.
this
Yeah.
is not for, not for snowmobilers.
Well, what about those like snowmobiles with the cross, you know, on like the snowmobile routes? I don't snowmobile, so like I'm not super smart about it, but they have the little stop signs in the snowmobile with the cross that means you can't snowmobile here. It's above
Sure.
the
That's great.
nose.
Yeah.
In my experience with snowmobilers too, is that 99% of snowmobilers are there because they want to ride on a trail.
Right.
Mhm.
Like they're not going to go AWOL in the city, you know.
They're just trying to get from the
Have you not
hotels
watched
up to
them try
the.
get to their
The
gas?
gas station.
Well, I've seen them trying to get to their gas, but that's because we put them on the north side of the
Right.
highway.
Just
Don't
kidding.
get me started. Anyway.
I thought that was due to the stoplights.
So, council, we got thoughts. We've got a resolution in front of us. We're gonna.
I'd make a motion to approve resolution 2022-09.
Is there a second for that?
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Any further
It's a race
discussion?
with credit. I won.
Appreciate you guys doing all the work on
Yeah,
this and
thanks.
putting together the
Thank you.
plans.
Awesome.
Look forward to seeing it completed.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch about that.
Sweet.
Cool. All right, moving on. Next thing on the agenda. What?
There.
Bike lanes.
Bike
We're
lanes,
still
that's
here.
right.
Oh, that's right.
You need to talk about bike
Still
lanes.
here.
Oh, we're talking about
I forgot that
downtown.
there's two things on the agenda for that, because that wasn't part of your memo. It's just,
Well,
okay, so
it's
talk to
'cause
us.
I missed the meeting I was supposed to be at because I was gone. So I said, please come
Oh.
to the full city council because I couldn't report back.
Gotcha. Okay, so what do you got?
We're
What's
here
your
to
guys'
answer
thoughts?
questions.
About the downtown bike lanes? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So at was it the last meeting or the one before?
One before.
The
One
one
before.
before, Mike presented the situation on the bike lanes and how they are not legal, and we would like them to, the Active Living Steering Committee has had multiple discussions that since they are not legal, they should go away, which Mike brought up 2 meetings ago, and then there was a lot of questions, so,
I don't think I was here for that one.
actually, I don't think you.
No, you weren't.
Okay, because I
No,
would have remembered
because
that.
Greg was-
I say we, because I watched these, see? The council had a discussion about who was the Active Living Steering Committee member, and you previously were, and you and Tracy swapped for YMCA, and as I watch all these meetings, we are,
Good on
we're
you.
you two best friends, PS, so. So I'm just here to answer any questions about the bike lanes that you have.
So,
What do you guys have? Because I have thoughts about it, but I haven't.
Well, I
Or
think
your
our-
thoughts?
I think our question was, I don't think anybody brought up the fact that they were legal or not. I just know what was brought up was the fact that we either gonna repaint them or leave them, not have them anymore. That's kind of what we,
Right,
I didn't know
so-
anything about them being legal or not.
Well,
Tell us
okay.
more.
Whether they're not painted correctly or something
Right,
other than
so-
that, I don't know.
Yeah, so
Technical.
essentially the thought would be that, you know, the lines themselves would just fade away. We would take the signs down and bikes would share the road like
Right.
they would do in a normal situation.
Right.
The technicalities on the bike lanes, Robbie has a really nice graph, but the bare minimum is that they have to be 4 feet wide. And these are not.
Not anywhere near it.
Wisconsin is 3 feet, and I don't know how wide Broadway is because I forgot, so sorry about that, but neither of them are 4 feet wide. And then also the safety concerns of the opening of doors into the bike lane traffic on Wisconsin, and then the angle parking on Broadway. You know, you can't,
It's happened to me
it's
too.
hard to see, you know, bikes coming if you're angling back. So previously, we had a discussion in the Active Living Steering Committee about doing back-in angle parking, but that was a very short conversation because that's hard for people to do, right? So after the Minnesota Bike Alliance came down and we did a bikeable city assessment, I guess would be the word, and we biked around the city and, you know, looked at connectivity and things. And when we came to the downtown, the first thing they said was, well, these are not legally wide enough. So since they are not legally wide enough and not safe, we would just prefer, I mean, they just would dissipate away, which would also then involve taking the bike lane signs down.
My personal opinion on that is I think that's just fine, because as a user of those bike lanes, you know, downtown, the traffic moves pretty slow, and you're not gonna be racing along there in the need of a lane like you would on Minnehaha, you know, down in the cities. And it's, my experience of almost getting doored by people opening up their doors is that even if you're riding on the inside line of that, like towards the center, the inside line of that bike lane, you're still gonna get doored. And, you know, on Broadway here, there's been so many times when I've been coming back from a bike ride, come down from the light, and people are starting to back out, and I have to either slam on my brakes or swing way wide to not get smushed.
Into traffic potentially versus being part of traffic.
Right.
Yeah. So I would be down with having it be a part of traffic than have it separated. I understand why it was done in the first place. I don't disagree with that. It's a good reason.
Right.
But
There's just not enough room.
the execution is weird, and, you know, it just kind of starts too. Like, it starts past the Java Moose instead of starting on
Yeah.
Highway 61. So you have to kind of ride on the sidewalk and then jump off into the street. It's kind of weird. Anyway, that's my take on it. So no action is an action in this one. It's just inaction is an action. Just let it fade away and take the signs down. Does that sound all right?
It's fine by me.
I agree.
Sweet.
Just
Is
think
that
be-
good?
Yeah.
Perfect.
What were you gonna
Yeah.
say, Craig?
I think it'd be less dangerous to just let them go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah,
Thanks very much.
that's what we wanted.
That was easy.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Okay, now
Thank
you're
you,
ready to
guys.
go.
Yes.
I'm sure there's not a third thing. All right, next thing on the agenda. So we have Greg right here with an update. We have them come by every year in the spring to tell us how things are going as a condition of our lease with them. And here we go. So we've got a couple of board members too. So tell us who you are and then jump in. We've got a bunch of stuff in our.
Hi, I'm Greg Wright. I'm with North House.
I'm Carol Winter. I'm on the North House Board.
And I'm Randy Schnobrick. I'm on the board and an instructor at the North House.
So first, thanks a lot for letting us be here or having us here. We come once a year to say hi. And, you know, it's always appreciate the chance to stay connected. Just want to, you know, it's funny, birthdays are funny things. Sometimes they make you think. And 25 years, I guess, it makes you think. And I thought two stories from the very, very earliest days. One, and you guys may remember this, Greenlandic skin-on-frame kayak building courses out in the Coast Guard station. This is before the words North House even existed, 1996, 1997. And by the end of that second class, a first catalog exists of 23 classes, and the city's trying to figure out who's going to use these two beat-up old warehouses down by the water. And next thing you know, North House jumps on board. And to create tables for the classrooms, the founders rip apart some old building dock because they don't have the money for materials and build tables, actually the great tables that we still use
That's why
on
they're so
campus today. That's why they're so heavy. So that's a pretty fun story. And then the second one is a memory from my earliest days of the school. 3 days after, in 2001, 3 days after I accepted the job to come north and be the first full-time director, first paid full-time director, my phone rang. I was living in Nurse Strand, and it was Peter Barsness on the line. He said, "Hey, Greg, are you sitting down?" Those are never really good words to hear. And I said, "I am, Peter. I'm eating dinner." He said, "Well, good, because the red building's on fire." And well, I drove north pretty early that next morning. And everywhere around North House, it was like an anthill. I mean, there were people everywhere, tarps going over the top of the building, equipment being moved, a dumpster had already been delivered so stuff could get shoveled in. And apparently at the end of the day, I called home and I said, "Hey, everything's going to be all right." And it has been. Everything's been all right. So, 2 things on our agenda. 1, quick annual update, just to how we're doing. 2, kind of a check-in about our listening sessions and road ahead. And I'm going to share stories, and then these guys can chime in on questions, but you should also elbow me when you want to say stuff. Fair enough?
Get 2 mics.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So, annual update on North House. How are we doing? Simple answer is steady as she goes. Things are all right. Past couple of years, really interesting. Some tough decisions. People, working hard, doing projects, low cost, high impact. I think some key info in your packet are some of the financial realities of the world of North House comparing 2019, 2020, and 2021. And if you look at that, you can see that first bar, program revenue. What happens if you teach classes for a living and you can't teach classes anymore? There is a huge impact. More than 50% decrease in tuition revenue. Although in 2001 we made a comeback. So that's good. And that said, you'll note the next column, donations, 2 pretty incredible years. People stepping up to say, "Oh yeah, no, I'm behind North House. I got North House's back." 2000 and 2000, the year 2000, 2001 are 2 strongest years of giving ever in our history. That's an incredible affirmation of the mission and the work of the school, and also all the work this community's done helping North House emerge. And that said, what I think a financial spreadsheet like this doesn't show is then all the other things you get done. Even with the pandemic, North House has moved a bunch of projects forward. A great example of this is our new partnership with a key funder called the Manitou Fund, which provided funding for accessibility and scholarships, giving us $60,000 to be utilized over 2 years for accessibility and scholarships. And if we matched it, we get to apply for a second 2-year grant for $80,000 more. Well, we've almost totally secured in about 14 months all $60,000 of that match. That's great news. That's great news for and it's focused on Indigenous students, on folks with financial need, on people with local connections, on people who are interested in being makers in the future professionally. We also worked on a project. We're launching a project with the Grand Portage Band and the Grand Portage National Monument, co-sponsoring coursework that's hosted actually up in Grand Portage. And in those classes, half of the class spots are for residents of Grand Portage, and they get to take those courses free of charge. And then the other students, we find them. So it's an incredible, really important partnership. And then another great partnership, probably pretty visible if you know about it, is the new driveway down on campus, which we cooperatively built with Angry Trout, sold them a piece of property. Well, why? 1, creates more parking spaces, not 2 driveways, 1, but 2, they're working to become a year-round business, and that's part of what makes that possible. So last kind of quick highlight about the year is, just as the pandemic arrived, one of our goals was to add a youth and family coordinator position at North House Folk School. We actually had announced it for a week. The pandemic arrived and we turned that off for some strange reason. And where did that begin? Well, it began in 2018. A guy named Cooper Turnus and a gal named Erica Turnus said, there ought to be more opportunities for local kids. And they launched the Handworks Club, an after-school program. Boom, filled up in fall of 2018. Winter of 2019, boom, filled up. And so we've expanded that program. We hired a new youth and family coordinator in late summer of 2021. So she's almost been here a year. This year for the spring after-school program, which we now call the Woodworking Club, we had to host 3 sessions, not one, 3 sessions to engage all the families and all the kids that were interested. Good things going on. So lots of other stuff I could say, but basic line, North House is doing well. Got some big plans for our 25th anniversary. One highlight, if you like pie, if you like free pie, if you like live music, you ought to make plans Friday of the Wooden Boat Show to be on campus. A good way to kick off your first big party of the year is to have free pie and live music and be outdoors on the harbor. So those are quick updates, annual report. Anything to add? Any questions from you before we jump into listening sessions?
One thing I would just say, and this isn't really new for this last year, and perhaps you're well aware of it, but as a board member, I was amazed when the pandemic hit at how quickly the staff pivoted and started offering online courses, which seemed a little odd because it's a folk school and we're doing things in person and doing craft. But that was really a wonderful thing to be able to offer people when everybody was shut up at home. And within, a week or two of closing down, that started, and there are a lot of online things that are still available for very reduced cost or free. And we're not going to shut those down completely. We hope we aren't going to be doing them at the same rate we have been. But there's been a real demand from the public for that, and that's made North House available to a wider audience.
I think most organizations have discovered that very quickly. They all did that, and I think they also discovered they're come out ahead. Because you attract more, you have a broader range of people you can attract. You're going to get more people consistently. I think that's been for other coursework and entertainment.
Absolutely.
Listening sessions? Anything else for the annual report?
No, we're good. So listening sessions. Past 6-7 weeks, we've been in the middle of listening, checking in about, with key community members about how their ideas about the future of the harbor, the future of our campus, reactions to our first ideas. And I'll note we did 6 sessions kind of formally. We did a lot of individual engagement, business connections, things like that as well. Spoke to someplace between 50 and 60 community members, some more than once, because they had lots of thoughts they wanted to share, which is great. Key themes emerged for sure. People want the harbor to be accessible to the public. Second, people really love the fishing legacy and the active fishery that is the core of our community's identity. People care about the Scott Fish House and its part of honoring the fishing heritage of all the people who've lived in this place on the shore of Lake Superior. People also pointed at a bunch of the stewardship stuff we did, the water quality concerns we'd addressed, the improved physical accessibility of the site. It's a pretty rough site right now, pretty industrial looking. They loved solar power. They loved carbon reduction. They understand North House has lost 2 small classrooms during the pandemic because they're just not functional anymore. They understand we need those classrooms looking forward. So that said, we had a board meeting last Thursday kind of trying to digest and figure out next steps. You know, do we know where we're going? What are we going to do? And I think there are three key things that came out of the board meeting. Pretty simple. One, listening sessions were productive. We feel like there are ideas and energy around shaping new paths forward that we ought to capitalize on. So we're ready as an organization to continue to spend more time working back into our master plan to figure out, okay, what's possible. Two, we've created a task force of board members and staff that are going to kind of champion that effort and begin to make the connections again to those same community members and more, trying to figure out, well, how can this work? We've got to begin to assemble ideas. And the third really clear thought is, you know, we have an aspiration, and that is to integrate all these ideas to make it possible for the Harbor to be more accessible, to make it possible for the Fish House to stay where it is, to make it possible for North House to have classrooms, et cetera, to figure out how can all those things happen at the same time. That's what the goal is. So plan on, and, you know, obviously, the goal isn't to do this over the course of 2 or 4 years like we just did during master planning, but actually to engage it pretty quickly and be able to come back to the community with some specific visions of what it could look like and how it should work. So that's our plan right now, and anything you guys would add?
I'd just add that I think that North House has done a pretty good job as far as due diligence with the whole Fish House project. And I think everybody's really kept their ears open and looking forward to something that will be agreeable to everybody. So I'm pretty impressed with how things have gone.
Anyone else? Questions or anything for these guys?
This may be too detailed, but I am curious, with the large fundings you received from the Cargill Foundation, those grants, do they affect any of your current planning? I mean, a lot of times grants have certain, I mean, it's not as much better than I, but they have certain purposes or things you give this money, it has to be done this certain way or whatever. Are those in considerations going forward with part of your plans, or is that money you've been given and they're done with now? And dealt with?
Great question. In the case of this particular project, our master planning and campus evolution efforts, we happen to be between 2 grant cycles with them. So definitely one of the things we've been doing, much as we've been busy engaging the community and keeping them up to date, we've been also engaging our partners, our funders,
Sure.
and keeping them up to date, because transparency is the way to do it. And so right now, they absolutely endorse the work we are doing as a community. Does that answer your question? So the simple, I don't think we're not compromising any funding relationship with them, because the grant for master planning is done, and now they're waiting while we digest and decide on next steps, and then we'll figure out how we'll work with them moving into the future, once we're done engaging the community. Is that more specific?
Kind of. I'm asking, is there something in the grant that dictates some of your planning already? What you can or cannot do?
You
with
mean
those
with
dollars?
regards to a timeline?
No, just, with this money, you need to do it, this is what can be done or can't be done. Or we gave you this money because you had this master plan and these were the things you were going to do, and now you're changing those plans. Well, wait a minute. In any way, is this affecting?
Well, I think, any investor in any business invest big because they believe, because they're excited about the path forward. Okay. Does anything in our work with MACP or any of the other funders who've helped purchase the dockside property, everything, say a building is going to go right there? Not at all. They say, we're investing in North House because we believe in the work you do with students, in your mission, in the vitality you bring to your community. I think go forth and figure out how to continue moving forward. So our master plan studied a lot of different potential locations for buildings. So we've got plenty, digging back into the master plan, we still have lots of choices to make, and that will satisfy our needs, hopefully the community's needs, and also MACP's needs.
That's more what.
Or Margaret A.
like,
Cargill
You know, how much
Philanthropies needs.
flexibility?
There
do
is
you have
flexibility,
to do
absolutely,
this,
Tracy.
Or was it like, oh, this is what we said, so now if we don't
No.
do this, we're at risk?
Yeah, great question. So the simplest answer, if I'd said it right at the first, yes, there's lots of flexibility built in, so we have room to have these conversations and figure out what the next right way forward is.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I just think you guys did a great job with, reaching out to the community and having folks be able to come in, offering times during the day and times in the evening, so different people's schedules can work, and I appreciate that, and I'm interested to see what comes out of it, so.
Don't worry, we'll come back to tell you all about it.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah,
All right,
thank you
thanks, guys. Remember that pie, guys. It's important.
Yeah, who's baking?
Who's baking the pie?
Yeah.
Blue Water Cafe, I believe, and it's Friday the 17th. Pies will start at 5 o'clock.
Oh, you're giving me dates.
17th pie. Put it in the calendar.
I think you'll remember.
It's so bad.
I'm always down for free food. All right, moving along. So, next thing on the agenda is pretty major conversation. This is the conversation about food trucks, about vendors in on public property. And so, a little bit of a background on this. The city does have a mechanism to allow for vendors on public property. The definition of a peddler that we use, or a vendor that we use, is not, I don't know, it's not a food truck, I mean, not saying that food trucks are necessarily different from a vendor, but they are. And so from the last conversation we had at the last meeting, we decided to pick some more information up. And so what we did is we had Chris grab what the city code from Winona says, which we have, it's probably about 10 pages in our booklet here, which is both the requirements for a food truck specifically, and I believe part of the actual application for it. So to me, it seems like we need to have a couple of conversations here, and the primary conversation that we need to have here is a conversation about where the city stands with food truck operations in general, and that, as far as the city's concerned, if it's an operating business that has all of its insurances and permits taken care of, then if it's on private property, it's kind of its own thing. We don't ask for anything in those situations, do we? Like any kind of permits or anything that's on private property?
No, we do. That's typically.
That's
That's the peddler's
Yeah.
permit? Okay, well, I stand corrected.
The issue is public property.
Well, and that's what we're talking about now. So if we're going to allow for food trucks on public property, then we need to look at these bullet points that are here. If we're gonna limit for a number, we'll get there, Christina. We have to create what the conversation is first, because we don't even know what we're talking about. And quite honestly, like, your request for a permit is something that doesn't really mean anything, because we don't have a permit to give you.
Yeah.
So like, we have to figure out what we're talking about before we go on with actions. So the items that are on this, that are in the memo here, the number, location, distance from existing businesses, other types of vendors with similar requests, insurance, price, noise, effects on parking, traffic flow, things like that, and then the garbage load kind of conversations. So these are all things that are handled in some way, shape, or form by the Winona ordinance that's here. If we're gonna do license, if we're gonna do ordinance, where we're gonna do it, all of this stuff is conversations we have to go through. So I'm not sure if, Chris, if you wanna jump in, Mike, if you wanna jump in with any kind of additional information to kind of guide these conversations? Because that's a lot of stuff. Like, there's pretty wide
Just
open.
one clarification, Mayor. So what Winona originally did, and I think I mentioned this the last time, is they used the license agreement originally before they had an ordinance. So they went for a number of years where they had, you know, 1 or 2 food trucks that wanted to locate in the city. And so the way they did that was by providing an individual license agreement, and that's that example in your packet is that. And then when they started to get more license, or when they started to get more requests, they decided that it was time to put an ordinance in place. And so that was sort of the derivation of their process. So, you know, you have some options if you want to allow food trucks. I mean, you have a current ordinance that allows transient merchants. This could be arguably fall under that ordinance. You could operate under that. You could do a one-time license agreement like that example in your packet. Or you could look at a broader scope, which is the ordinance. Or you could do both. You could, grant a license agreement on the one-time basis now and then work on the ordinance.
Okay. Well, that gives us, thank you, Chris. It gives a little bit of direction. We have, you smiled, do you have thoughts?
Yeah.
Okay, jump in.
This came as a request from a food truck, but the feedback I hear and where my brain goes right away is that that's just an example of, and here's another expression, mobile merchant. And it could be anything. You could be selling a service, you could be selling, which we already have other peddlers on the street, right? Peddlers is actually, to me, kind of, it's an antiquated type.
Mm-hmm.
It puts to mind a different time in society where people literally, to have someone come into your small town, you didn't have a lot of storefronts, so these peddlers are moving from town to town all the time, right? Which isn't really what we have anymore. But I think as a community, we need to think bigger than food. And maybe food ends up being like a side, like we have a broader thing, and then there's aspects if it's food, if it's something else, whatever. So when we do get this bigger thing in place, I don't think we can just frame it up as food trucks. And what I hear from our community is that very same thing, that we need to think bigger than that. And I'm sorry, I didn't, when I read the note back, the request from Christina, and 2 paragraphs devoted to the issue of competition, to me that's not something we as city council are here to talk about nor make decisions based on that. If you're running a business, you're running a business, and competition is always there. It's not the city's to
Manage.
Right. I'm certainly not, and if that was a feeling that got sent back, I don't personally think that's the issue here. You either have a product somebody wants to buy or you don't. But I would like to make sure when we get done with this, we've thought broader than just food trucks. The other piece I've heard and is my concern as well, of course, is garbage, but I think that pertains to any establishment that puts out a food product that is to go. That could be a brick and mortar too, not just a food truck. You can flip that. If you're downtown Minneapolis going to the food trucks, you're usually going down for lunch and you're one person, you get a very small little thing in your hand. It isn't a lot of garbage. I'm going to take a stab here. You're getting more containers, more pieces of stuff. You got a big pizza, and now what do you do with that box? Or you've taken a big bag of all sorts of stuff with a family to feed. So my point is just, I think garbage is more of an issue for us. And of course, what came up from our conversation with Christina last time was gee, do our other food truck type people have garbages? Is there a requirement they have to have some garbage cans sitting out there, at least available to their customers? And I think we had some uncertainty if that was in place or not. And so I think we do need to make sure, I would advocate, I think that's a given.
Well, yeah, I would agree so too. And I think our experience with food trucks is pretty limited, you know, I mean, the times
Right.
that we've seen them, they've been on public property with, you know, the businesses that they're part of or themselves have taken care of,
Yeah,
taken care of management of garbage
I
and
mean,
things like
and,
that.
and I, you know, caught the, I don't wanna go back to make it all about Christina or whatever, 'cause I think it's a much bigger conversation, but she says, you know, I will take care of my own garbage. Well, the garbage you created making your food, which I don't know how much that is. It's hard to control garbage because I can get whatever I want and go down to the lake or wherever and eat it, and then I've got to find a garbage can to put it in, and I think most people try to do that. So,
Well, and we experienced that with the whole pandemic and when everybody was doing
Was
takeout and
extreme.
everything like that, it was,
yeah,
you know, we were sending the city guys out, the maintenance guys out a couple times a day to empty garbages because there was so much stuff.
yeah.
So I mean, that's not a novel concept. I do think that, you know, providing garbage cans, you know, at a food truck is kind of a given, like you're saying, and also I think that it's fair to say that a food truck garbage is gonna get hit with other things that wasn't from the food truck. So probably the more garbages, the more it's gonna lighten the load anywhere.
Right,
So-
it'll just sort of help even things out. And she may not have utilities, or some may not, but there may be other vendors that will need utilities or other sorts of services in general. And so I think we have to think about that. Maybe not, but could, I don't know. And then it's the whole issue of how we use our public land and what's our responsibility back. And how do we charge or not charge for that? And is it ours to set public land out and, I mean, $100 peddler fee is nothing. And I don't even know how we set that. Is it just to cover our costs? Is it just to show some skin in the game? I mean, how do we set that $100 fee? What does it really mean?
I mean, it's so that we know who's selling stuff within the city limits and to cover our butts, like to cover our costs and processing it. So I mean, it's really not anything more than that.
And then where does that compare to other merchants who are trying to sell their product, whatever that may be, and their related costs? And what is our obligation back to our community? Do we charge rent or not then on public land? And then we hear about lack of parking, and that's not a lot of space, but how many people, is it too many then? I mean, we can't look at it in a microcosm and say there's just this one person, and then 5 other people pop up, and then at what point do we say we can't keep utilizing public land, potentially parking? I'm not saying it's a no, I just think we gotta think about this from that angle. And then typically food trucks move. They're only allowed, you're in a bigger city with more options of places to go, and you're so many days you can be on these streets, and then you're over here, you've got more events you can go to. You just have more opportunities. In a small community like this, I think we have to look at them differently. Where can they be and how many can we have? Of any kind of mobile merchant.
Anton, Craig, anything?
I'll go first, Greg, if you want. I think, I mean, my look at this would be to try to work through a licensing agreement to allow this to happen for this season for Christina. But I do think that just so we're not, I mean, again, it's ultimately, if we say that this is something that can happen, is it gonna be us that's approving the license agreement, or is it gonna be you that's going through with and obviously there's cost involved with, you know, Chris as well, at least in fine tuning the example that we were given to look at, which I think is pretty good. There's some clear things in here that don't really jive, right? But I think that getting this happening, and even if somebody else approached us this season, we could at least be, you know, it would be equal in saying, okay, here, and like that.
This is what we're using.
And we can take the time for what it takes for us to go through what that process is to actually get it into an ordinance. And it's potential that even within that ordinance, at least the way I'm looking through all this, and when I was reading it before, there would still be an agreement that would have to be signed for somebody that was gonna try and do that, right, on public space. It might not be might be more streamlined process if we actually put it into made an ordinance about it. But it wouldn't just be like ordinance, all they have to do is drop off, you know, a check for whatever that price is, and they get free reign. I'm assuming that we still would have a lot of the same language that's in the license agreement if it's in an ordinance. Is that right? Am I thinking of that right?
I think they have pretty similar terms.
Yeah,
I don't think they operate very differently.
okay,
I think the ordinance just means they were pretty settled on the set of rules that they wanted to use.
yeah. So you know, to the points of trash, I mean, I do think it makes sense that obviously, like, you know, Christina would take care of anything that she for sure produces within the vehicle, and like for production, but then, you know, a couple cans there outside of it is great. But I mean, there's no, you know, I don't know how many people in the summertime in the evening are like sitting inside Dairy Queen when they get an ice cream cone. I mean, they're going down to the harbor, right? So like every restaurant that offers to go and walk away service is contributing, right? And I don't think that, yeah, I don't see that, I guess, this idea of being a negative, and just as many people are gonna throw their Euro wrappers from Sydney's into her garbage cans as they're gonna take her stuff and throw them in elsewhere.
Right.
So, you know, yeah, so that doesn't really bother me, as long as it's not like, you know, there's not like 5-gallon fryer jugs like sitting outside for the bears in the fall, or for kids to mess with, and for our staff to have to deal with and dispose of.
Well, and that's, I think there's also something in the Winona license here that talks about, like, when it's not operation hours, they have to be secured. Like, they have to have everything inside of it and secured. And if it doesn't, we should definitely add something like that.
You know,
Because you can't just have it, like, stuff outside of it.
you know, I don't know, do you need us then to, I mean, if everybody agrees to that idea of trying to do a license agreement, is that something where we should really clarify that language, looking at things that she's saying and the things that we've found in this and recommendations from Chris, and we should just get that dialed in like right now? Or is that something that we can bullet point highlight some of the ideas that are, you know, clearly in the Winona one of them is that, like, number 15, during the term of this license, licensee shall at all times maintain a fixed, non-mobile operating restaurant location within the city. Clearly that one can go away, because that's why we're trying to do a mobile food truck.
I don't think it's clear at all. And as a matter of fact, I think some of the key terms that you do need to weigh in on, how many of these are you going to entertain, and what are the locations you want to have available?
That's what I'm saying.
And what is
It's
the
like-
price? And I think the rest of this, we can clean up the stuff that's clearly not
Okay.
applicable to Grand Marais.
Okay,
But those kind of high-level policy conversation
So that's what we
questions,
need
you
tonight.
need to clarify that.
great, okay, that's what I was trying to make sure that we understood.
I guess the one takeaway, maybe this is a little early in the conversation, but the one takeaway I had from our discussion last time was the only reason that this is in front of the city is because you could not or did not find a private property owner to rent from.
That's not entirely true.
But I'm just that's, from the conversation we had, that was my takeaway. That could be, I mean, you could maybe need to clarify, but, so my thought still is that has that been totally explored before it's landed here with the city?
I mean, private properties?
Right, available to utilize, as opposed to being on city property.
Well, whether or not that's, you know, that reality is what it is, you know, I mean, but whether or not that conversation has happened to its fullest extent, I think that it is prudent for the city to have this conversation. Like whether
Oh,
or not
right, we
Christina
still
finds a
have to-
spot on private property or
Well,
not,
but
this
that,
is coming.
it does change the, right.
Yeah,
But
it
that
changes
changes,
it.
it changes what we're gonna do right now
Yeah,
Gotcha.
versus what we're gonna, like, say, yeah, this makes sense that we should address food trucks and what we change in our ordinance language to address the future of, right, versus like saying we're gonna do that,
Mhm.
which I think, I don't know, we haven't let Craig talk yet, but the.
I'm doing a lot of thinking.
Game
right
changer.
now.
But that potentially, right, is moving forward, but it's really then just like, what do we do in the short term
Gotcha.
versus, you know,
Yeah, I mean, I think.
which would have a difference if there was somebody or somewhere else that wasn't on public land that could happen, then we could move forward with trying to understand what the ordinance language looks like and work through that in the time and process that takes and get community feedback, I think, which is important in that. And look at maybe other, you know, examples. So anyway, that's all,
yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're up.
I think.
You
right?
did lots of thinking, now you gotta do lots of talking,
So Anton,
or not lots.
are you then want to address these bullet points that we have here while we're looking at a possible
Yeah,
request for license?
I mean, I think.
I'm not prepared to do anything tonight, make a decision on this tonight. I'm prepared to bring up these, we have a lot of things we need to talk about,
This is where I think it's important, I think.
you know? Yeah.
These bullet points from
Right.
this, I think, are something that needs to be into the ordinance language.
Correct.
And they also can be looked at as if we try and do something in the near term for getting a licensing agreement to let this
Right.
happen for this season.
Right. I think a little history we may want to bring on board tonight. I listened to everything Linda had brought up, and I do agree with a lot of points that she made with the amount of traffic we have coming into this town during peak season, and accessibility of food has sometimes, in the last maybe 3 years, has been a problem. And a lot of it is due to some of our brick and mortar places just don't have enough employees. And so they're closing certain days of the week to keep their employees still interested in working and not burning them out. And that's an issue we have. And that's kind of created a need for maybe another avenue to feed our visitors. But and that's very important, and there is support for them, and I think there is city support. It just gets real sticky when you start looking at public land to put these on, rather than, in the past, they've always operated on private land. Now, Fisherman's Picnic, they operate under the Lions Club's permit for that weekend. That's how these food trucks come in, is not by the city. The city doesn't say, we're not bringing these people in, but the Lions Club is bringing them in, and they limit how many they want, where they want to put them. It's under their permit for the weekend. And the art festival was the same way when they had their art festival downtown on Wisconsin Street, but this year they're having it up by the school like they did last year, and they're also having 2 or 3 food trucks up there under their permit. So the city really never was in the public land food truck lease business until we're looking at this right now. The thing that worries me is giving a permit or a lease. Where is that going to stop? What if next month, or what if July, we have 14 people here sitting here, we want spots out on Artist Point, or we want spots downtown in prime locations? then I'm gonna have, that's kind of difficult to comprehend that, but, you know, there's a lot of business in this town in the summertime, and it's a very successful area to make money when it's busy. It's not a very successful area to make money when it's not busy. I've been in business for 27 years running a gas station, and if I could run my gas station 3 months a year and lock it up, I sure would have, but I can't. I never did. So that kind of bothers me a little bit about, you know, it's nice to provide the need, because there is the need, but also you have to take into consideration the businesses that are already here. You have to take into consideration that the city has prime land that some businesses don't have the opportunity to use and utilize. A food truck does. They can go anywhere they want.
Well, if we let them.
If we let them. Well, I'm just saying, and we have to discuss where these can be, where they can be, how long they can be, how many do we want. This is a pretty big task, I think, for us to take on, and I know we can do it, but those are the questions that I have, and some community feedback. I know Linda has gone around and talked to some people here, but I don't think, you know, I think that I'd like to have a better basis on how I make my decision and that it's supported. That's kind of what I kind of want to, that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah.
You
It's a
know?
good start. That was a solid start to a certain segment of getting feedback, but I think you're right, we need more.
Yeah, and you know, I mean,
The locations that we identify too for potential places where they can be will also drive some of the comments. And
On
it's-
city land you're
Yeah,
talking
on city
about.
land.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, when I think about where on city land, you know, there's not a ton of spots, you know, that there's city land. So, I mean, like, taking a
well,
look
there's
at-
parking spots all over town. You can put
It's
them
true,
wherever you
there's
want.
parking spots all over town, but it's also, you know, and I've been the mayor for 8 years, and every single year we have people coming and talking to us in the summer about how terrible the parking situation is. You know,
Yeah,
and
well, I
so
know.
it's like, okay, that's fine. That's just gonna keep happening no matter what. But I mean, this is really helpful for me to hear each of you go through and talk about where you're at on it, because it sounds like, if I'm interpreting what you guys are, what you're saying, it sounds like you're not saying no to the fact that we need to do this work, which, you know, am I right? It sounds like you're saying we need to actually do this, and this is something that we should work through. And if we do that, then you know, some kind of a, like what Chris was saying, some kind of a license in the present, ordinance in the long term kind of solution is what we're shooting for. And if that's what we're doing, then you know, if we're gonna do a license, then the critical items that we do need to figure out tonight is we need to figure out, you know, we can go through this ordinance, we can look through all the stuff about garbage and whatnot, but we need to figure out, like, is there gonna be a length of stay? Like, is it something, because in the Winona ordinance, it says, or the Winona license, it says you can't be there for more than 21 days. You can be there for a certain amount of time and then you have to move. Now, if we only identify one location or two locations that that a food truck can be, then that kind of isn't important. But if we identify multiple locations, then pretty much we have an understanding that that's as many food trucks as we can have. And you know, that would then take care of the number, and then the price of it too is something that how do we value this as far as you know, the comments that we've already made, like it's gonna produce more trash, of course it's gonna share that burden for trash, but it's gonna create an impact on the city, having more businesses like this. So then how do we share the price across that? And still make it accessible. So it's, am I talking on my butt? Does this make sense?
I think,
No, you're not.
No, I think you're right, but to me, it'll be the first thing I said before, it's not just food trucks. When this gets done, we have to analyze all potential
Vendors.
vendors.
And they use-
Whether they get subdivided into little categories because they have very specific issues, and we need to, maybe a certain vendor won't have the garbage issue, another one will, or something else, or some needs utilities
Well,
and
you
doesn't,
know,
I don't know.
another thing, Tracy, is how long do they stay and what do they pay?
Yeah, what do
I mean,
they
there
pay?
are sites around our town, and I drove around 2 days ago looking at them. There are private sites that people own land and pay taxes on, and I don't know if they've been researched
Yeah,
for possible. For example, we have a couple sitting over there right now that have a food truck on a private site, and I'm sure they pay some kind of rent, right? Okay, so I mean, there's an example of a private site already using a food truck. I don't know if there's more room in that site for another food truck. I don't know if the neighbor next door has room for another food truck. I'm just throwing suggestions out there. I have a piece of land over here that is empty that nobody has ever talked to me about putting a food truck on. I'm just, I don't know, are we taking something away from people that have private property that pay taxes on by saying we're gonna open up our public property to leases for food trucks? That's kind of another question that I have.
Well, yeah,
Whether it matters or not, I don't know, but I'm just bringing it out there.
Well, that's where it gets back to what I was saying. I think some of this in the immediate becomes less of an issue if it moves on to private property.
What? It's no
And-
issue to us if it moves on to private property, other than
It already
being licensed by the state.
It already works.
It already works, right?
So it would make it easier in this specific one example, and that's, you were here, but you weren't at the
I wasn't at the
meeting.
last meeting, no.
But, so I mentioned some of maybe the Historical Society's property that pinged around, maybe they had some extra space, maybe Harbor Inn would if they aren't gonna develop this year. Your property, we talked about McDonald's, or, I mean, you can go online on the county online maps and look at any lot you want, see who owns it, and contact them. So was, I guess, my question back, has that been thoroughly investigated? It's maybe none of our business, but it would make it possibly more efficient and easier and give us time to
Well,
address a really important issue.
and on that note, and like, it would be great to hear from Christina a little bit on this, but I mean, when we do this, the only thing, well, it does, it increases accessibility for trucks. Like, it gives trucks another, or mobile
Vendors.
concessionaires, whatever you wanna call them. Because they do talk about massage therapists in here, which I thought was kinda creepy, but that's all fine. But, if the city has an avenue for getting this to go through, and there's a certain number of those that the city will host, or, have a license or an ordinance to cover, then that gives it like a baseline, and then I think that allows for the private properties to then continue to queue off of that. It might end up that it's easier for people to go on private properties, and when we create an ordinance that people would prefer to be on private properties, it would kickstart the economy for that, you know what I'm saying? Like, it would then, people who have properties that could be developed for that would then be more ready to make them available, because I don't think that they're readily available.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, I get it. Like, it'd be more plug and play, because they knew what the deal was, and then it'd be easier to say, yeah, I know what I need to do if I'm a private owner and I want to lease
Well, and
the
also, then
space.
if they see food trucks going there, and they know that there's like a rent that the food truck is paying to the city, and they're just like, well, shoot, I've got this chunk of property that's doing anything. Somebody put a food truck here. I mean, I don't know.
Right.
We're like, a lot of what we're throwing around is hypothetical. And Christina, I don't know, you want to come up and tell us a little bit about your experiences finding a spot? And I'm sorry for not letting you talk sooner, but we have a lot of figuring out to do for like what the heck we're even talking about.
I totally understand. I'm just like gearing up for my busy season, and in my mind's like I still have like 5 hours of prep left to do. That's kind of an hour growth late. Thanks for considering this again this evening. So some things that I wanted to clarify is the reason why I put those things about the competition and this and that is because twice now that I have, the first time when I came to try to purchase my peddler's license, which I wasn't allowed to do at the time, and when I came the last meeting, it was brought up that the key reasons why normally food trucks were turned down is because of the fear of competition and that businesses didn't want freeloaders. So addressing that, that kind of language, not only does it subconsciously start implying that I don't pay anything, it's really patronizing because I pay a lot. I put a lot back into this community. And I also invest a lot of my own profits and my own time back into Thanksgiving boxes and the Violence Prevention Center and all of the, so, I feel like I'm not, and then you mentioned that you kind of sat wrong with you, the idea that someone could come and work for 3 months and then take the rest of the year off. I work year round. I work at a restaurant in the wintertime and I clean vacation rentals, so at no time do I have months off of work that I'm not working, just because I'm not working at my food truck in the winter, because who wants to come to a food truck when it's, 30?
I understand that. I just know that when we open this up, we can have other people come in who want to get a license to do just that. Come in
Yeah.
for July, August, and back down the highway they go.
Well,
I mean, I'm just
Sure.
saying it's a possibility that we have to
Yeah,
deal with that
of course.
request.
And I was, thinking, I know you guys have to have a lot of time to really put a plan into place, but what if you were okay, this year we're only gonna allow 10 permits and people that live here get first dibs on those permits and then the rest of them fill out. Then you have a cap and it's not just people going oh, all of a sudden there's 37 food trucks in the parking lot. Set a limit on how many you're gonna issue per year. And the reason why, not only is it really hard to find affordable private land, but the whole reason why I got a food truck is because I don't want to be tied down to a lease. I don't want to have a mortgage. If I could afford those type of things, then I would have bought a restaurant, because my food truck is not going to generate enough income for me to pay $800 a month for rent, plus whatever utilities they want to charge. And these are the prices that I was greeted with when I inquired about private land. I think maybe I pay a $500 seasonal fee of some kind. I don't know whatever the price term is, but I know that it's not really fair or realistic for me to basically have to lease out someone else's property when I bought a food truck so that I could be self-contained and have a lower overhead, because this is what I could afford and that this is what I can manage. If I could manage those bigger bills, then I would have invested in something bigger to generate more income to cover
Where
those
then are
costs.
you thinking you'd run your truck then? What was your plan of where you would be then?
Well, when I first bought it?
Yes.
Well, when I first bought it, I don't remember if you remember our text messages, but I asked before I even bought the food truck, you're as long as you have all your permits and your license, and no one even mentioned a peddler's permit. I operated for 2 years before someone finally came up to me from City Hall and was like, you need all this permission. But I did ask Jay, I texted Jay and asked, and he was like, as long as you have your stuff, it should be fine. So that is why I bought it. And at no time did I I mean, we can pull it up. I'm not trying to put blame on you or anything like that.
No, you're
It's
not.
just-
I'm just asking you what your
Yeah,
business
I'm
plan.
just-
This isn't about personalities or people or
I know, I'm
specific
just- I don't wanna-
conversations. I just wanted to know what your plan was.
That was
if
my
you
plan.
didn't feel you could afford rent for any physical space,
My plan was
what
to
you were
have-
thinking of how you would operate.
My plan was to be it would be on the street, how other cities have food trucks. And like I said, I'm not displacing responsibility or anything as to why I got the
fine.
food truck. I'm just clarifying that I perhaps wasn't as fully aware of all of the extra hoops that were going to be presented before me 2 years later. So, I understand that this is a huge issue and that it's not going to be resolved tonight. That being said, this weekend is the first weekend of my season, and it is imperative that I operate. It's imperative. Like, I have to make this money. And so I'm asking that tonight or within the next day or two, if, you know, you can just come up with an agreement that satisfies everybody for now, while you guys take the time to like really suss it out and, you know, and research more, whatever counseling things that you guys do that I don't know, because I'm just a chef. But
Well, you're a business owner now, you're not just a chef.
Yes, I'm a business
So
owner.
you do have other, and I know you've had a lot of good counseling to figure out, you know, to figure out how it all comes together. I feel uncomfortably being put in a time pressure now because you came to us just one meeting ago to think about something, and I get it. You know, we get the time thing. I grew up here, lived in a family where, just like Craig said, there's no money except in the summertime. So you're not telling me anything new here. But to wait till one meeting before to bring this up is kind of difficult too. So I think that's it. You know, like you're aware, it takes us some time to think this through as well. And I also am hearing from people that are trying to run businesses and are concerned about this whole issue of just coming in without, you know, they're thinking about all these things all the time. And it is more easy as a mobile person just come and go and not have to think about all the costs and expenses from our brick and mortars. And that's an issue all over the place of these kind of merchants. And I get the whole concept, it's a good starter. It's a good while to get a business started. Many of them end up in a brick and mortar situation when they can afford it. And it's just where are we to help with that and help that growth. And how much does the EDA helped you with some of this? I'm assuming, you know, as economic development, have they been a source of assistance or helped you at all to kind of
I
plan
don't
for
even know
any
who
of
that
this?
is.
That's Beth Drost. It's
Then
the city
that's a
and
no.
county economic development.
No.
I'm not sure you understand what you're asking about the EDA.
Well, I would assume the EDA is here to help economic development. Have they been some source of help for
Have
her
you,
with any of
has
this?
anybody asked, I think Tracy had asked if you've contacted them, or maybe you don't even know, it could
I
be a
don't
resource
even- yeah, I don't even know
a
what that
resource
is.
that you could
I
use.
don't see how the EDA can help in this particular situation. That's the only question I have, because I work with the EDA and I understand their economic development position. But I'm not sure with Christina's need for a spot on the street, how the EDA would be involved in that. I'm just trying to figure that out, I'm sorry. It's
That's
not
okay.
just a
I would
money-
say maybe they could be helping out her find places to be, other ways to make this work. I'm sensing that part of this is falling on the city right now to help solve this, and I think maybe it could be a bigger conversation.
No, I
Do you,
think-
so if you run, excuse me, you have a generator?
Yes.
Okay.
I also have 2 of my own trash cans and 2 of my own recycling cans that I used the last 2 years that I operated, that I took care of all my own trash and the customers' trash. You know, like they put their trash in there, I took it to the city dump. I took the recycling myself to the recycling center. Like every single day, I lock everything back up in my truck and I move it at night.
Did you have, I'm just
Well, I didn't
thinking
move
of-
it from Jill's spot, obviously, because, I mean, you've seen that backyard. Can you try to imagine moving that truck out of there every single night? But I would move it every single night from this public space.
Do you know, were you plugged in when you were over at Jill's?
Yes.
The only, I mean, it's just one of the things that, because I do think like there's a benefit to you being fully self-contained, but I also think then, I think from your picture even, or where you'd be facing people stand on the grass and order, that, I mean, I have like my RV and my generator is like super annoying, like to the point where it's embarrassing to run, because it's like, and so just thinking of that, like, you know,
Sure.
if you're out in the evening and it's a calm night on the harbor and like, right, like that's, and it's, again, it's like, this is all, I wasn't at the last meeting, I did watch the last
Definitely.
meeting to understand what the conversation was about. But just thinking about that, I mean, because I think the self-containment issue is important, but then it also makes me think like, well, geez, like, you know, obviously there is the rec park, which is right across the harbor, and there's probably people running generators over there too, right? I mean, like, absolutely, but just thinking of it, yeah, I don't know, just thinking of not so much the impacts of what one would do, but what, oh, till 4:30. There you go, I missed that from your, I did read your note, but I don't have your note in front of me.
Good point, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's I think it's, yeah, I mean, I still kind of am along the lines of, I mean, I'll say nightmare instead of what I was gonna say, as far as trying to like find a place, if you're trying to find a place to eat in this town, in the summertime, and it's been that way for a long time. The pandemic didn't help anything. I've been all over and been to places where on public land, this is the spot where they have food trucks, and this is the spot where it happens. And, you know, sure, it maybe doesn't help one individual because there's 6 different places to choose from, all within a, 50 square yard area. But at the same time, it's kind of awesome because not everybody likes the same stuff, and you can show up. And I think like the idea of like, this summer, it's not gonna help us necessarily with the boat landing, but next summer it's gonna change, because next summer, the new DNR project, is that gonna be done this summer? Ready
Yeah,
for
this
next year?
fall, it'll be done this fall.
So, thinking again, as we're trying to think, you're getting wrapped into like the big picture, but I think it's important for us to look at the big picture, so that we make responsible choices. I think the idea of whether it's a zone or a spot or whatever it is, that we do it versus scattering things around the city. I mean, I think there's something that may be kind of beneficial to that too.
Like a designated area.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's a good conversation for us to jump into, because if we're gonna jump into the conversation about doing licenses for this season, for or any at all, for food trucks or mobile concessionaires, then like we need to know where we feel comfortable having them. And like in my brain, when I go through this, pretty much anything to the north of Highway 61 seems like it's kind of a meh.
I think that's
location.
the CI and or downtown
And
core
downtown
is
core,
like the,
yeah.
I mean, obviously, like, maybe not obviously, because it needs to be stated, like not in R1, not in the, mixed use zone.
I
Potentially.
mean, yeah, I guess. I mean, well, if we don't change anything with the way the zoning ordinance is done right now, it's not gonna be allowed in those zones anyway. In like the mixed use zone or residential zone or anything like that, because it's not an accepted use right now. So if
Yeah,
we,
It's not an accepted use, but it's different because it's on city land, it's not private property, right? And that's the,
Not worth spending any time on. No
Yeah.
one's interested in having that happen, including her.
well,
Yeah.
see, so what I'm saying is that we shouldn't spend our time on anything
Yeah,
to the
okay.
north of
I got
Highway
you.
61. We
Yep.
need to focus on the city property on the south side of 61, which is relatively limited. We're talking about Harbor Park, Bear Tree Park, Boulder Park, the Artist Point parking lot, and this parking lot, the area around the building here. I don't know if I can think of any other city property down there.
First Avenue West and First Street.
Oh, as far as the streets themselves?
Mhm.
Right.
Oh.
Duh. So we have to think about where are we okay having them and where are we not okay having them. As far as having one like parking on the street and taking up a bunch of spots on the street, I don't know if that's a good idea. Because I'm concerned about the parking thing. Now, there's lots of other places that we have available. Like for me personally, one of the things that comes up is the gravel lot at Boulder Park, which is, where we usually have
Porta
we usually
potties?
have porta potties, and then
And
we've got
trees?
that spot there that's facing Broadway.
Mm-hmm.
Like that spot, we could probably fit 4 trucks in there. And then, that would be a destination at least.
It's also under the conservation easement. That's something we would need to check in with them on.
Right.
And our
Well,
read
with
is,
with
when
most
we
of our
talked
land-
about that in the rec park side of things that it's.
The rec park would have to be in on that discussion, I would think.
And even if they were, even if the park board was okay with it, they may very well be. I don't know that Minnesota Land Trust is okay with it.
Right, so then so if we axe,
On the
like on a
point.
short term, if we axe the,
In Boulder Park.
yeah, if we axe the conservation lands out of this consideration too, that removes Bear Tree Park, Harbor Park, Boulder Park.
Bear Tree Park a little bit, but the Harbor Park, the major open space of that is not included in the land trust. That's typically where we have vendors set up.
Say that, which spot again? Say that again?
Basically the larger section of open space in Harbor Park.
You mean the one that's mostly paved?
What
Okay.
used to be Gene's property. is
Would they
not
set up
included in
the tent?
Mm-hmm.
Music-
Right, the
music
over,
on the park,
the
right.
one that blows in the wind.
Yep.
And it's possible that the land trust
Away.
would be okay with Boulder Park as well. We'd have to demonstrate some kind of historic use that this fits in. I don't know whether we could do that or not. I can guarantee you we can't do it by
Yeah.
Friday.
There's nothing immediate about that.
So then that gives us, well, Harbor Park and the streets and the parking lots. Does that sound about right?
Harris Point.
Well, that's what I mean, parking
Yeah.
lots.
Yeah.
There's.
So, I wanna kind of throw, just because we're talking,
Yeah, well, we're just
Mhm.
talking.
to go to the bullet points that were brought up in Mike's memo, before the information from Chris. I would say that we just, I mean, if we develop a license agreement, improve a license agreement for the bad seed for the season, I think that we need to at least put out there that we're gonna have X number, like we should address some of those points so that, you know, we don't, in 2 weeks from now, we don't have 25 or whatever it is. So I would just throw out there that at least if we wanna try and move this forward, and I don't know if we can move anything forward by this weekend, but, if we can at least move this portion forward so that she can operate, and we can then have a deeper discussion with input from the public, the community, and other folks that are potentially affected by it. I would say, if I just go down the bullet list points, I would say that we just like allow 6, so like 6 total. Was that look good or not
Sorry.
enough? You can say a number too.
I know.
And that, I think that we do actually concentrate things out at Coast Guard Point, out in that area, instead of having it scattered all the way around town. And that, to me, if you think of distance from, again, it goes back to the competition thing maybe a little bit, which I don't think is an issue from the feedback that we got from the chamber, but it's almost creating this like spot where there is food trucks, and whether it is people that are set up out there and they choose to pay this fee and they're gonna be here the whole summer, the whole season, that's fine, or if they're just gonna show up, that's fine, but we have a maximum of 6, which helps that distance from existing business language, because, I mean, the closest thing would be Sydney's. Was he on here? No.
Yeah, Bruce is on there.
No, he isn't.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need
Oh,
more,
other
we need
side.
more help
My
feeding the
bad.
visitors.
Okay, and then I think that we just have to, we have to maybe blanket what the other types of vendors with similar requests. I mean, so it's not only, food, but it's, you know, somebody could be selling handbags, right? I mean, it's the same thing, like, that's what it is. And so we have these same rules that apply, whether you're, you know, the general liability, I'm assuming that Chris and/or maybe Mike, but would give us some guidance to what general liability requirements would be, we'd look for on that. I don't have any understanding of what those totals would be.
It's all listed in the
I
information
assume-
that Chris included in the packet.
What they used, you mean?
Yeah, what they use, I assume,
Oh,
is
sorry,
pretty
I was looking
general.
at the bullet points.
Would you agree? Like, it's kind of a general understanding of liability, insurance and such?
Typically, you want to be able to cover the city's tort liability cap. So you got a tort liability cap of up to $1.5 million. So if someone was injured or what have you related to the food truck business, that the food truck business has commercial general liability insurance that covers that liability in the event that the city is sued because this operation is going on city property. And so the vendor then is responsible to have insurance and to indemnify the city if there is such a claim.
Gotcha.
So may I ask a question? So I do have insurance for up to $1.5 million that does cover if someone was to get hurt or injured near my truck or caught their finger in something. So would I then, okay, so for instance, like I have a separate insurance policy where the community center's kitchen that I rent, they are listed on that insurance in case I get hurt or something happens. So the truck insurance that I have, would I then list, I'm sorry that I don't know the technical term for it, but would I list the city as, like, what am I trying to say? Like how the community centers on
Yeah. Are you gonna have to list the city as
Yes.
like under your $1.5 million
Yes.
liability and
Okay.
whatnot? I think
Typically, yes.
Okay.
As an additional insured, the city would be named on your certificate of insurance as an additional insured.
Okay.
So if I can fire off the last of my bullet points, the insurance requirements, I would just go with what is listed in the Winona, the number 12 there, because that seems straightforward. I have no idea on price at all, but I would say that I just wrote down, $1,000 from May to September, which maybe it's a calendar year, or maybe it's May to April or something, I don't know what, but I have no idea what $1,000 is, if that's stupid low or if that's stupid high, I have no concept.
Well, we haven't looked at it. I mean, that's the
Right.
thing.
So that,
What
but,
do you want to base it on?
but we have to, well,
How big is your truck?
Market rate?
It's 35 feet.
We'll have to
long.
base it on some kind of investigating.
I can't math.
'Cause I haven't done any investigating on any of this. I mean, you know, we're talking, they have what, a 21-day thing? You're talking what, a 5-month thing?
yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't,
Well, and
I
you-
can't throw numbers out
Today.
tonight.
I can't, I mean, I don't know, I'm just,
I would like to,
Plus, you had a very specific, window of time in mind, and someone else could come in and say, well, I only want 2 months, or I want 9 months, so we would have to do even in the short term,
Yeah.
we need to come up with something that is a little bit more flexible. It won't be based
Not
on,
necessarily. I mean, we could
this.
just have the license expense be the license expense.
I
And if
don't,
you only
that's
want-
why I'm saying no, because I think this is a rent at this point. I view this a pricing thing more as a rent type
So you're
deal. I'm
saying-
sorry, I didn't say that very clearly. That was an unspoken assumption. A price to me is not just back to the peddler's fee right now, like, is it based on the cost of getting a peddler's fee put together and all the checking we need to do, background check. To me now, a price back to the constituents of this community is more of a rent issue. That we owe that to our community members on public
and I looked
property.
at that $1,000 to, like, maybe you're there May to September, and maybe there's only 4 people that have applied, and somebody wants to come up and work Fisherman's Picnic, and they're gonna be here for 4 days, well, it's still $1,000 if you wanna park on city land. Was my
Yeah,
take, right?
yeah,
So that gives
so-
the benefit of the
To people who
people
stay
that
longer.
actually live here and are trying to do it in that sense versus somebody that, I don't know, I have
Okay.
no idea where that, I mean, maybe,
get
I don't
it.
know what that number's supposed to be.
Right.
I don't think it should be like a monthly thing, cause then that's more work for us to try and gather,
Right.
right? Otherwise, you sign this licensing fee, you sign that check, and you're not gonna get your license until you pay that, right?
Hey, Chris.
And there is a legal issue there too. This is not a landlord-tenant type of a situation. This is a governmental license to allow a use, and there is no property interest in the underlying property. When you talk a lease or a landlord-tenant situation, in that situation, a tenant has a property interest in the property itself. In this case, they have no interest. This is purely permission to be able to use government property.
And so the way that the Winona did these licenses, it was a one-time fee. It was, here's the fee for your license, here's your license, these are the terms of your license, sign up, follow them.
That's
don't
that's
follow
right.
'em.
Yeah, and I unfortunately I don't remember what they were charging for
It's
fees.
not in here.
No,
You know, it
It was redacted.
Well,
it's
Winona's
actually
beautiful
it's in
city,
a
but it's
different
not
ordinance. In
Artist
fact,
Point
they have a
either.
fee
You
ordinance.
know, we have a much smaller
Yeah,
area.
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, that's where I don't know where to come up with that number, but I'm
Well,
just,
I found some others online. I mean, I think we can go out and look. I found in other communities. I guess, you know, I get your point about technically it's not rent and whatever. Well, technically, but, well, I'm getting feedback from a community that people
That's how
can't
it's
be on
gonna be.
public land
That's the way it's
for
gonna be taken.
no cost.
That's the way it's gonna be taken.
Chris is talking
So-
about a legal issue, and what you're talking about is what I was asking. What's your basis for coming up
Right.
with this cost?
Money.
right.
Yeah, so I get the difference, so maybe it's not good terminology, but that's what I'm hearing, and I feel we owe back to our community.
So what you're thinking, Anton, I think is more along the lines of we need to figure out what that one-time fee for a set amount of time is. And then whatever rules and requirements like go into it, we can hash those out, you know? So how many, where we're gonna allow them to be, and that amount. I think that still kind of comes down to those three questions about, you know,
Well, those were just just to keep conversation going or try and find some resolution on. And then the only other thing with noise is there's things about like, I'm assuming, I couldn't quite understand because it's written, I guess amplified sound would mean like
Music.
speakers or music is what
Yeah.
that means. And so my thought on that was just making sure, because if people are gonna be self-contained, they'll be running generators, making sure like they actually have mufflers that work. Or ultimately, we have a noise ordinance in place. So,
I mean, seriously, though?
it's hard to enforce.
Yeah,
We already know that one.
yeah.
So it might be.
Who's gonna decide what's too loud?
We do that equipment.
you know,
You gonna set a decibel amount? Are we gonna try to measure it? Are we gonna
Is your
wait for
generator
somebody to
really loud?
complain?
No,
I never
Well,
heard it running when I was.
Yeah,
upstairs,
that's
so-
the whole,
it's
this
not
is
very loud.
what makes this conversation difficult, is we have to think not about you, but we have to think
Yeah.
about you.
You're in a
to-
shitty spot because
yeah,
you're the first one
kinda.
we're considering. And
Yeah.
so then like all the questions that we're asking for the sake of getting something inert set.
Definitely.
And it sucks for you because you're the one sitting in the chair. And so when
Yeah.
we're talking about this, you probably have 90% of this stuff already taken care of. And,
Yes.
and we're like, oh, we gotta get it codified in such a way so that it works for everyone, not just for you.
Sure.
And so
Right.
that's, I mean, I say that just to kind of like appreciate you sitting through all this.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
because that's the, even if we do the immediate temporary, there's still certain issues that have to be bigger than just this
Correct.
instance, this suggestion that has to be thought through.
Well, and I would say if we're gonna do this for the season, I think that we need to set a limit, like, right away. Like, just have that be, like, the number of licenses it will issue is 5. The number of licenses will issue is X number. And for me, that has to be based on the amount of space we're willing to give to this. And for me, like, I'm really hesitant to give space on a street for it. It just seems like it's gonna congest way too much traffic. And so that, in my brain, narrows it down to the Boulder Park, which has its significant issues. I think Harbor Park is too busy, like to have a food truck permanently planted in there. Parking lot here, parking lot Artist Point. So I mean, like, if we're gonna do that, you know, what's the plan, Stan? Like, how many are we gonna allow to be in that, and how much work do we wanna put into asking the Conservancy what we can use the Boulder Park space for? Because it's, I mean.
well, I just said the number 6 randomly, not randomly.
And I said,
Well, but you could fit 2 of Christina's truck and not in Japan our charging stations along the,
If you park her across the spaces, you mean?
yeah.
Yeah, which is,
parking.
I've never really been on board with the parking problem to the level some other folks have, but that'd definitely take up a lot of spaces.
Yeah, you lose 12 spaces.
I mean, yeah. I think if you look at Artist Point, the grassy area that's right to the right as you're going in, there's some of that that's not in the Boulder Park conserved space.
Is that the stuff like on the south side of those boulders that were put down there?
Yeah, I mean, and those boulders there, because we really don't like people driving on that piece of property. It's not
Yeah, for real.
turned out very well for us.
Pretty
Became a big-
soft.
But you could maybe fit 3 trucks or size along the roadway down there. I don't think you could fit 6. And I don't think this year we can use those parking spaces because we still have an obligation to allow those to be used for the boat ramp
Yeah.
until we're done with the new boat ramp.
I didn't even think about that.
So, but that doesn't mean we can't use the grass because we own it. So that'd be the one spot. I think if you want to use this parking lot over here, you either have to give up a whole lot of parking spaces or you have to have maybe
Get creative.
1 truck that's oriented towards the sidewalk.
Well, yeah.
And to go back to your first comment about time, and then I showed you her times, but you're right, we have to have time in there in general.
Yeah.
Hey,
'Cause we have
did you
to
see the
think.
Winona time, by the way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 10
10
p.m.
10
to 2 a.m.
2 a.m.
Yeah, I was like, wait, what, that's a typo.
Yeah, I think that's a
Nope,
typo.
that's definitely not a typo.
That's
Can I ask-
That was for one specific circumstance, though, so that was one use. There were other times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am, yeah, I don't know. So I don't,
Well, here's the thing. We can't say we're gonna do more licenses than we have established locations we're willing
we'll
to.
go 4 then.
So if
then we're
we
both
think we
wrong.
can do 3 or 4, I mean, then let's just,
Great.
then, I mean,
4?
and we're all on board
Say
with
4.
trying this. If we all wanna give this a shot, and we can say we can fit 3 or 4 trucks in a certain spot, then we say, this is gonna be the spot, this is gonna be the price, we'll figure out a number, and then we've answered most of the questions here. I mean, I think that what we're doing right now is something that's it's gonna keep happening, and it's going to get more prevalent. Like, I think we all agree on that. So, you know, Christina's an established business person. She's been here for years, and she works year round, and she's a good gerbil or guinea pig or whatever. She's a guinea
She's
pig.
calling it
Guinea
gerbil.
pig.
Guinea pig.
Guinea pig. I was like, it's a small rodent. What's it called? She's a good guinea pig because I think you'll probably you'll play well with us, right? Like if
Yeah,
we
of
say
course.
this is what we're working on, and we're going to try and get feedback, and we're going to try and figure out how all this works, and we're going to limit it. I think we got to start really small, because if we start big, then I think it's going to get out of hand. I don't know. I have lots of thoughts about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I only want to have cordial relationships with not only people in this room but other business owners. I mean, I plan on living here to the best of my ability. I plan on living here for the rest of my life. So, you know, I plan on being here for the long haul, and I'd like this to be not only successful for me, but you know, maybe hopefully open up the door to other people being successful here as well.
So where are we at? So you know that, we have meetings every 2 weeks, basically. And so the next one we have will be on June 8th.
Yeah, the Wednesday's the 1st, so.
Yeah, so June 8th. And so realistically, the best that we can do for this is if we say, okay, we're gonna write this all up, we can have it ready to be approved on the 8th. Like, that's realistically the best that we could do for this. And that's, I mean, we have not said that that's what we want to do yet. So I don't know if we're leaning towards that, if we want to start moving that direction, you know, are we gonna have another conversation like this on the 8th if we do the work? That's what I want to try and avoid. Like, I want to make sure if we make a decision tonight on the number, the location, figure out a price, you know, I don't think we can make that decision tonight. I think we need to do a little bit of research to figure out what that's going to be. But we're looking at probably a one-time season payment. If we want to do those sorts of things, then we start working on it, and we move forward, and we get ready to have it ready to go on the 8th. Is everybody on board with that, or are we missing?
I don't know what
something?
you mean by start working on it. I think you've been working
Well,
on
I
it.
mean, yeah, that's right. I mean,
For a
getting
pretty good hour
something
now.
that we're ready to sign, you know.
Or are you gonna have one license? I see Winona had choices of 3 different licenses. Are you gonna do a 7-day, a 1-day, license that's 8 days or more for the whole season?
The peddler's permit's set up that way too right now, Mike, right?
The peddler's permit is either a 4-day or an annual.
Okay.
I mean, this is, one of the reasons it works is we're not in the landlord business, and they have to have a landlord in order to get one.
Right, that's where you
typically.
start, when you start discussing
If
price.
we're in the landlord business, we do not want to be sorting through 7-day and 4-day and all that kind of nonsense.
Season-wide.
Yeah, we want to talk to one person one time and have it establish what's going to happen and be done with the conversation, and they do their thing and
And
go
we
back.
can still attach dates to it,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
should.
You want
We
it to
have
be
to.
seasonal, that's great, but what, I mean, do we want it to just be opened up where somebody can pop in and say, I want to be here for 4 days on the city piece of property, and then we've got to have a reservation system and all that other stuff? I just think, no,
No.
this is,
We have a mechanism
Nah,
for
I
that.
think the
trying to do
language
here.
should be like, here's when the licensee starts, or this is when you're gonna have it, and this is when you're gonna be gone from it. And if that means that, you know, to avoid I mean, because then there is opportunity to bring, you know, if we limit it to 4, say that's the number that we pick, if somebody does want to be here for just a weekend, because they're coming through anyways,
yeah.
cool, you still got to pay the full seasonal thing, but we know that actually, okay, well, as soon as that licensee is gone, there actually is, unless that's super, I mean, that's where we
I
have
think
to
if we
find
have a
that
license,
price.
I
to
mean,
make
if there
sure
was a
that it's-
market for somebody to come in here for 4 days and pay $1,000, somebody with property is going to want to be in that business, right?
Well, I don't know.
We typically tell people that we need at least 10 days just to process your license. And because of what, you know, the background check that's involved in dealing with it.
Well, and there's a lot of
Well,
information
you
in
can
this.
flip that too. You could drive through but then say, look, I paid my fee. And then
the spot.
right, so I got the spot whenever I want to show up or not show up until it ends.
Yeah, that kind of gets to the
I mean,
next
it's
level
good.
of this for me is, I could imagine you saying, we're only doing this for food trucks because we see a need.
Yeah.
We don't want t-shirt trucks.
Well, and that's, I would be tempted to go that direction, because I don't think we want
Umbrellas.
to.
But then if you're saying that, like, we're assuming we're getting something out of it, it used to be this way about liquor licenses when we limited them, that we put rules in place that said you have to be open a certain number of days then, if you want to use one of our limited number of liquor licenses.
Hmm.
So,
You're suggesting that's one of the things here?
I mean, they can't
Is there
figure
something-
that out for the weekend either, but I think if we're
Is there
trying to
something-
establish this is an exception that we want to make because of the community need, let's make sure it meets the community need.
Yeah.
An annual license which allows the mobile food unit operations in the city to operate in the city for 8 days or more from March 1st to October 31st, is
Yeah.
what they had down there.
And then the
that's because they had a
$1,000
7-day, you know, a 7-day license. So if we get rid of the 7-day license, you know, are we gonna put a date on the minimum amount of days you have to be open if you have that license? I mean, I don't know. Seems kind of silly, seems kind of micromanaging to me, but you'd think that if somebody paid the money to have a spot, that they'd want to be there as much as possible,
Exactly.
but won't.
Well, it just depends.
Buy up all 4 spots.
Depends on what they pay.
Yeah.
Yeah, depends what they
If it's
pay
for
and
free-
what-
And they might decide they don't want to be open on Tuesday either. And
That's
we've
fine.
got the same problem.
In Winona, before they had their ordinance and they were just issuing a license to individual businesses like that example, a lot of the timing was these businesses or the food trucks were only interested in operating, on Friday and Saturday nights. So the license specified that, okay, you can be on this section of the street on Friday and Saturday night between, 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. That's how they originally structured it. They became more flexible once they designated certain locations in the city later on. But like I said, with this one, I mean, you could certainly put in the license agreement, the parameters for the days on which she would be operating and the hours that she would be operating. And so that's the license period that they operate. And then any other time outside that, the truck can't be there.
Yeah, we could do a lot of different things. It was good to hear from restaurants, but I have gotten some feedback. I would like a little bit more feedback from more in the community, even on this short term. What do you think about timing? I mean, I don't think we can get this done unless we had another special meeting to meet these deadlines. I'm not gonna
To go
come to
through all
another,
the
right, I'm not gonna sit and do
details.
this in another city meeting. We need a planning meeting to make sure everything was addressed in a timely manner.
What,
Not to sit here for hours into an evening meeting, and not have this buttoned down a little bit more.
so
Well, if you do have availability for that, we're currently trying to schedule one.
Well,
We're
that.
looking at the end of
that's
June.
one, 'cause,
Yeah, I know.
The end of June.
I know.
what was our, like, well, yeah. I mean, I think whatever.
Well, I think we're starting to get to a point of fatigue with this conversation, and it's, yeah.
Well, no, I think it's good we're talking about this, but the reality of it is, I understand what her request was, but we don't even have a license
To give her,
to give her.
yeah.
Or, it's food truck and public space, that's what's on the agenda. But now we're trying to put together a license, we're trying to put together how we're gonna do this, we're trying to put together, this is like a special session kind of thing that we really should have had. Don't you think? I mean, I
agree.
can't sit here
It's a lot
tonight,
of
and I
stuff.
can't put down something to hand over to have drawn up right now, to plug in, to put in the paper and to advertise and try to get people, I mean, I don't think I'm ready to do that tonight. And like Tracy said, I think there's a little bit of feedback that I would like to get. I would like to run some numbers on what we're gonna charge for this kind of thing, how many we're gonna have, where we're gonna put them, the best places to put them, if we're gonna use city, well, we're obviously gonna use city land. I'd also like to spend some of my time talking to people who have private land within the community and see what they think about something like this.
Because is
I
it gonna,
mean-
is it gonna take away potential?
I don't know, I'm running numbers on my land that I own, what I'd have to charge per month, per 3 months, per whatever. I don't know, I'm just kinda looking at, if I have to not vote on this because I own land that's empty, that's fine. But I'm just kinda trying to come up with what private people, what are they charging now? If somebody has a piece of land, what would they charge? And I know we're not in the landlord business, and I get that, but we are creating an opportunity for business to operate on public city property that may be in prime locations that other people don't have. And we have to consider that. I think we should, if we're gonna lump these together in one area, in one spot. I think that's one way of doing it. If you're gonna spread them all over the place, you need to consider where you're spreading them and where you're putting them. And who's next to them and who's not next to them, and, you know, that kind of thing. So I think, we do need to talk a little bit more about how we're gonna put this together, other than just throwing something out there
I mean,
tonight. I mean, I'm just,
Yeah, I think I agree with you, and I think what Christina brought forward as far as like, this is what she intends and how she intends to do it. I mean, she answered most of those questions that we'd want to be looking for on our future licensing agreement, right? I mean, so I think that's great, but I do think I don't know how we can just say, yeah, go ahead and open up and do it when we don't have that, I don't know how we can do that.
Well, we could have Chris do it. I mean, and like,
Well,
and.
but
We have a draft in front of you right now. We can spend another half an hour getting it right if you want to.
And it could happen, and now I'm saying that I am not lost on the fact that there's input that could be gathered that would inform this process better. So I totally agree. Is something we should do, but if we do this, like if we do a set number of licenses, 4 licenses for this year, we find out the details we want to make this happen, on the understanding that this is the only year there will be licenses, and that next year there will be ordinance to govern this, and that gives us the time to actually get it done. then we're creating the space, we're creating the opportunity for the businesses to have it happen, and we're also doing our homework and we're making it happen. So I mean, like, I think that there are ways to make it happen. I also acknowledge that it's not ideal. It's not ideal. Like, for any of us, like, you want to be open right now, and we want another month.
What happens if, back when we were trying to do, wasn't that a licensing agreement that we were trying to work with Tim for access to the property that he was trying to buy? Was that a
Different kind of
license?
license, but yeah.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying, and part of that, when you said that, what made me think of it, part of that agreement was this potential for that to basically cancel when something else had happened, right?
Yeah.
So can't we do a more simplified, a more simplified process, a license, like if we do take, maybe we table this and we can talk to the tenants association, so he doesn't have to sit here till 9:30. Oops, almost there already.
Yeah, that seems,
Probably
And-
10 o'clock.
Or not.
I mean, if you want,
Because then we can take the time, and then when we get the real one done in a month, then the one that we sign, so that she can work for the next month. But unless that's
when do
more
you
work.
want, if you want to have something that's a draft that you can look at and work on and potentially approve, we could do that for your next meeting. We've got one in front of you right now.
Yeah, so what other
that
points
is
would you,
pretty serviceable.
what other points would you need to make it more Grand Marais specific, other than what we've already discussed?
Well, you haven't really nailed down the location. You don't have to do that tonight, but it has to be done.
Yeah,
You've limited it to a few spots. So we can take those few spots that you talked about, put a map together and show you a few ideas of specifically what that would be.
okay.
And then we can dress this up to be Grand Marais specific license agreement that you can look at your next meeting. I still don't know what you want to charge, and so that's, if you want to work on your own to gather more feedback about what you think the right price is, and, if you want to work on your own to gather more feedback from the public, but we'll also put something out to say, here's what we're talking about. So
Does that work for you?
perhaps folks will also contact you based on that.
I'm just really uncomfortable because we're asked for a time frame that really isn't, I'm sorry about it, I get it, but I don't feel comfortable having that.
No, so we wouldn't do anything right now, but we would just,
Well, even to get her up and running, I'm sorry that she's in this late deadline, but even to get a short-term thing, I want a working session. I don't want to come to another meeting and then find out we haven't gotten it down to the point where we're really nailed down, and yet I don't want to sit in a meeting and think it through, and I don't think it's that far along. I think some of the really key things are still to be set, and that does mean feedback from other people. How do we figure out the pricing? I think we need some thought about that. I think we kind of addressed, and the other thing we need to do, and as a side note, is I think we need something, if it isn't there in our ordinances, that everyone needs to have some garbage cans out when they put their stuff out.
They're like any
Even on
peddler or-
private land, whatever, food truck or
Well, as far as,
whatever, a
I was
peddler.
thinking about that too, Tracy, as far as private people who are allowing food trucks on private land, I think we should have the private landowner have that in their. Do we do anything to regulate that? Do we say anything to the private landowner?
We don't say anything to any private landowner other than don't let trash accumulate on your property.
Okay, so if we're gonna allow private landowners to have food trucks on their property, part of it should be, they need to be responsible for the fact that that food truck needs to have a garbage can, one or two or whatever.
It's a big issue you're opening up. We've got a
Well, no,
garbage
I'm
can
just saying
in
that
front
we
of the
should
dumpster.
specify it because I know, I mean, I think.
And I'm getting the most feedback about that.
And that's great.
So,
I mean,
Back
people
to
can
your
put their
idea, we
garbage
need to
wherever they
spend more time
want,
on
but I
this.
think if there's
Yeah.
no can available on the specific piece of property that has the food truck, I think we're not helping the situation. We're making it worse by allowing this and not having, it might be a city can across the street, but, I'm just,
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
you know what I'm talking about. I'm not,
We've typically put cans next to where people are
I know we
serving
do.
food.
But I think the owner of the land should be responsible for having one there also, that they're responsible for.
Then, yeah. and
That's an
that's-
adjustment to the.
So then do
peddler's
we also
permit.
need to talk to the donut shop and to Spenonoli's and to Blue Water?
Yes.
and
Well,
to
the
do.
donut shop may have, I don't know,
That's fine.
well, you're right, I'm just, you know,
So,
when business became outside orientated rather than inside orientated, this became an issue.
It was an issue before, it really was.
we had lots of garbage. I mean, but that's a different issue too, because people dump their garbage in our city
I mean,
cans all
and
the
when
time.
you think about, okay, so you wanna get really narrow about it, if you are a food truck, you don't have an inside place to say, here, I'm gonna take back and clean your table and grab everything. It's inevitable, it's out there, and it has to be dealt with. So, yeah, I'm hearing from other people, and I think we need to hear a little bit, and you're right, it's timing, that's the whole pressure to this.
Yeah, I-
Or we could do a better job of getting information
Well-
and come up with some really, and there's plenty of other ordinances in other cities to read about and think about. We just have to put it in context of the fact that we aren't a large city for which most food trucks and these kinds of things operate out of. So we're operating a little bit differently of what we're trying to do. She wants a permanent spot for a limited amount of time. I get it, she's gonna move it every night. Most food trucks, that's not what they're asking for. And they have more events and things, and they go off to different places for things like that.
Well, I think it's fair to assume that if we create spots for food trucks in the community, that's the model that most of them are gonna follow. I think that the summer up here in a food truck business is lucrative enough that they're not gonna go to another event, they're gonna stay put.
That's, I mean, it's a different thing.
I mean,
You-
we
you
need to
know,
build
what
that
they-
into the expectations for the ordinance.
Mhm.
I mean, that, really to me. So-
Yeah, I just meant it like when you read other people's ordinance, it's with a different way
yeah,
of how
we
they
gotta read
can
it.
operate. Yeah, we
Yeah,
just have to
read it in
think
our own-
about,
our
like
own
you
way.
just made a good point.
Yeah.
Like, they'll be here.
So you have a food truck?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
So we got an expert
We got a
witness
real
here.
one here. Not that Christina
Todd's-
wasn't, sorry.
Todd and Pat Smith. Just a couple of comments. Is this a public hearing worthy type of, you're talking about getting more feedback from the community? Is something like this changing an ordinance or building a new ordinance, is that something that a public hearing might be required on?
When we do ordinances, we're required to have 2 readings of it. So the first reading is approved, and then that's when it goes into the public record, and then if people have issues with it, then they come to the next meeting, and then we can either table it or continue.
Yeah, it's not a legal requirement, and it's really not the best way to get input on this issue either.
No.
It would be to.
We would probably get out there and ask people questions and find out what we're looking for. Like, just like Linda went and asked very pointed questions to very specific people. We would do a similar thing on a wider scale.
Well, and if there's an impromptu public hearing because 17 people show up and want to talk to you about it, you probably would listen to them. That's generally what happens.
Secondly,
Yeah.
as far as resources go, I have a lot of information. I did a lot of research prior to setting up ours, so if you need any information from my perspective as somebody who's operating one of those, I'd be more than glad to share. Rent right now on private lots is $650 to $800 is what it's going for per month.
Bingo. How did I figure that out so quick?
That's
She told
what
us.
my experience was.
Oh, is that what she said it was?
Yeah, she said.
I base it on my taxes that I pay on my land, that's what I base it on.
But, general liability insurance and those types of riders, that's real common in business.
Yeah.
I provide my own electricity. I had electricity hooked up at the T-shirt shop there. We had service brought in there. I paid them for electricity.
You have your own meter?
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's, and as far as the competition, that factor goes, we're so short on food in this town, and we
Yeah,
absolutely need all the vendors that we can possibly get. And Christine was one that was, and we all serve different things. She was serving something completely different than me or Crooked Spoon or anybody else, and I think that's absolutely necessary. Diversity is, competition breeds competition. It breeds the future. So I don't think there's any problem with the competition as far as that goes. I just think that, my personal feelings is, I did all the research, I did everything that I need to do to be on private land, and I done it. It's out there, it's possible. I understand her situation. There are lots available to rent.
We'll have to see. I mean, a lot of this is, yeah, I mean, the decision to use public land for this is an interesting one. So appreciate your
Yeah,
input.
that's-
That's
Well,
helpful.
okay, so there's a brainstorming. I mean, she wants to be open this week and wonder if she could find somebody in the short term that would at least give her
Well, I
some
mean, and that's,
private land
that's,
till we get this figured out.
what, I mean, realistically, if
she's
we aren't able to
self-contained.
do this in the amount of time that she's looking for, then realistically, she will probably have to, but it's, yeah, I don't think that it should stop us from continuing to work on it, you know.
No,
to
I'm
try
just
and go
saying, I
forward.
mean, I'm trying to like, I get that she wants to be open this weekend, but I feel it's unrealistic. You've already set that
Well, and when
expectation.
when
But
I
is there
said-
somewhere
yeah.
other way we can help, you know? Is anyone out there listening who would help her out for a weekend?
Yeah, it's, yeah, market rates, things like that. So I guess, where does that leave us? Do we want to try and set up a different, like another work session? It seems like we're having a really hard time getting work sessions set up, period. So setting up
Yeah.
another one makes me kind of leery. If we want to move forward with having a draft license for the next meeting, we can do that. Like, we can work with what we have here and with the spaces that we've already identified, we can do that. And, you know, it's just that if we go through that work, I think that we haven't committed, but we're kind of committing to going that direction. So if we don't want to do the license, if we want to have the ordinance fully cooked by the time we're ready to dig into this, then we have more work to do. Then we have to do a work session, and we have to sit with this for a lot longer. And I think that's, you know,
That's what I'm hearing
possible.
from Tracy pretty clearly is,
Yeah.
there's some big issues that we haven't figured out, and the best venue to do that is in a work session.
It's just because I don't want to get to a meeting and then we're,
Then-
oh yeah, we hadn't
then
thought
balk on
about
it,
this
yeah.
or whatever, you know,
I
waste
agree.
time.
Yeah.
More than happy, oh, you're right, calendar's full, but I'll make every effort to, if people want to do that, if they don't, whatever, but.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm torn about it, because I think that we could do a license and have it work in, like, until we have the ordinance done. And then just have it written into the license that when the ordinance comes into effect, just jumps into the ordinance instead of the license itself.
I'm sorry, I really did mean a working session just for this specific.
Oh, for the license.
Yes, I didn't mean the whole ordinance. I really meant just to get this. Yeah, to get this thing you're talking about, with how many do we do for this year and everything. I decided I didn't say that very well. I don't mean the bigger thing yet. I think that will take more time.
Well, maybe we need to do,
I'm out till June 15th.
You guys are out till the 20th at least.
Yeah, I mean, we're already trying this, right, so we know.
Yeah.
We're already trying to get a special meeting,
Late,
it's already
late
pushed.
June is the earliest that's gonna happen.
Well, that's right. If we have a working session, that's not, is that posted?
We don't
we don't have a date.
have anything scheduled.
No, I know that. I was just trying to remember what the process is. Does that?
Yeah,
mean-
it's a public meeting that we have to post, and
So there's a time delay just because we have to do that, right?
Well, it's
if
also-
you wanna set one in the next 3 days, you can just continue this meeting, but I don't think that's gonna happen either. I think what we're looking at is your schedules do not allow for a meeting outside of your regular time, or even during your regular time, when you're all available to spend a few hours talking about anything until late June. And we already had an issue on the list.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm done talking.
So, I'm kind of, I feel
Well,
kind of.
I think it's unfortunate that this is happening to her, but I do have to make everyone understand that she requested something that we can't even deliver, without having this long discussion we've had already, because we don't really have a license or an ordinance to deliver. You know, that's why at the beginning of this meeting, I wanted everybody to understand why there are food trucks here. They're either on private land or they're here under the art colonies art fair permit or the Lions Club permit.
Permit, yeah.
And for us to do something different than that, we don't have that to do until tonight we've seen this stuff. So, I mean, I know it's unfortunate, but I also think that, there may be, like, I'm talking to somebody who's on private land already. I know what the rates are.
Well, we're learning stuff.
We're
right
learning
now.
stuff tonight. We learned a lot of stuff tonight. I think it's good that we had this discussion, but I also think I'm not ready to say, here's what we're gonna do. We're having 4 sites, here's what it's gonna cost, I'm not ready to do that right now, tonight. I don't think so. I think there's some more information out there to gather before we actually put together a license that we're gonna do, because we've never done this before.
Well, do you want this on the agenda next time?
Well, definitely for next time, but I don't know if we can be any sooner. I mean, I probably have more flexibility than you guys, but,
Yeah, I think we should put it on the agenda next time. I think that we should be doing research, and I'll talk with Mike about who we should gather information from around the community. And next meeting, when we talk about it, maybe we'll have a different feeling about it. Maybe we'll have an understanding of, like, hey, this is what market rates are, this is what the space looks like, this is what we could actually potentially go for, and then, hopefully, yeah, I don't know, if we need to have another long conversation about it, we probably will.
yeah.
But it sounds like that's the most efficient way for us to do it, because we're not gonna do a work session until a long time.
Right, so you're looking at June 8th, put it on the,
Put it on the agenda, and then we'll I'll work with Mike to get some expectations set up. He can maybe send those out to you guys, and then we can be thinking about that over the next couple of weeks, so that we can at least hit the ground running when we talk about it next meeting, because it's big. Like, this is really big. This is something we've never done before. So, as far as the community itself is concerned, we have models. We have potential ways that we could do it. We need to run some scenarios and see how it works. So,
I'm sure there's tons of info out there. Is it possible that we can get some of that as you find it out, so you can be thinking about, I don't want to look at
Yeah,
it
I
for the
get you.
first time at that meeting.
Send it
Right.
to Mike. And
send
let
it to
him
Mike and
disseminate.
then
Yeah, so we can be kind of absorbing it, hey, if you find something out, make sure it gets shared.
Patrick can update us,
Yeah, and.
like you do
kinda
on
know.
other things that come along. I mean, that's nice to do that.
Yeah.
And it-
So,
It's so easy to go out and find tons of information. How much time I have with other things to be able to do that in a short time, I don't know. So the more we can share, there's,
right.
like all these other things.
Well, in the next couple of days, I'll come down and sit down with you, and we can hash out some expectations and something to send out to the rest of the council to prepare. So, does that sound like a plan?
Sounds great.
All right.
And I still am troubled that it was ever a question of competition. I don't know, I personally never viewed that as one of the issues.
We don't have to
Of
view it
that.
as an issue.
Right, so I'm just sorry
Fine.
that was time spent thinking that was something the city was trying to address.
Yeah, well, it's not our job.
Right.
Okay,
it's not.
we ready to move on? You were amazing. Thank you for waiting so long. All right, so tennis association. So we've got, yeah, right.
I forgot that.
We're
that
not
was on
done.
there. Yes.
We're not done.
We are not
right.
done.
Okay, so the tennis, and we're not gonna
45 minutes left.
We're not gonna shelve this one after he waited through all that. So, all right. So
He gets the gold star tonight.
you should just jump in and give us the explanation. We've got your memo about what the scenario is here,
Right.
and I appreciate you giving us the financials for the last 3 as well. So,
Right, at this point, we are still working hard, getting money from other sources. The county's on board and, is going to be committed to this. We're raising money from Northern, which is the Northern Tennis Association, and they committed.
right.
Somebody's working on Lloyd Johnson, and
Bob, can you hold the mic towards you a little bit?
There you go. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
And the IRRB for some money. As in previous years, we're committing, around 10,000 for our budget, and we also have a fundraiser with our members and anybody else who's interested in helping out. Just to give, I think I kind of summarized the programs and what's going on. We have a lot of youth programs. I'd say 20% plus of the members are from the city of Grand Marais. And a lot of the other ones are within very small distance outside the city, It has, it's got a long history, and it turns out that the first court was established around 1900, and the first fish pick tennis tournament was in around 1939. So, long history here. The association was started, when was that? I'm sorry, in 1992, and since then they've grown to about 100 members. Obviously, we have a lot of people who play on the courts and aren't members and don't have to pay anything. It's not like the Y where you have to have a Y membership. People just show up and start playing. Over the years, the last few years, we've had pickleball added, and at this point, we have a lot of pickleball members who are members as well as players. Because we know what the cost is going to be approximately. It's going to be about $150,000 for the current resurfacing, and it should last easily 10 years. And then the next resurfacing is more like painting lines on that surface, not totally tearing off that surface and starting off with a new surface.
Is that the same treatment that you did to the other ones?
This is a brand new surface. The two courts have what we call Pro Bounce, and it's kind of a little bit rougher in the way they applied it for those courts, so it doesn't work out for pickleball. But it also runs about $220,000. We got a quote recently compared to this one, which is $160,000. This one is like a kind of a mat that gets laid down and sealed, and it has a little spring to it, so it's a little different feel. A lot of I've visited these, and a lot of the Lifetime Fitness courts in the cities have those, and people really like those. So it's seems to be a good surface for the reconstruction.
Okay. So the ask is between 15 and 20,000 for
Yeah,
the
we're not trying to get any more than we need, but we don't know how everybody will come in terms of what they're committing to. It'd be nice to have a commitment from you. For that, the courts will be done end of July, beginning of August. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's end of July, because we're hoping to have the courts all surfaced for fish pick for that tournament.
Well, any questions for him? Any thoughts?
I think that I was around in 2015 when we did the last ask on the
Actually,
two-court reconstruction.
We were
That was
all
that
here.
original bunch.
Yeah,
Um,
all three of us.
Yeah, I think the biggest change since then really is I know we probably talked about back then, but it's county property, and I think at that time, because of its kind of association with the Y and our agreement with the Y, I think that we agreed to help on that. And I think that there's been changes, which isn't really your guys' fault, but there's been changes in how that agreement has been worked out between the county and the YMCA, and we were not really party to that. Yeah, I don't know, I mean, so you don't have a solid number, and what are the different totals that you have from what's the county contributing to, if it's 230?
We don't, that's the problem, is we don't have figures for everybody at this point. And so that's why I asked 15 to 20, so that if we find we're short, we'd like to ask for 20. If we're doing fine, then 15 would be great, you know.
Sure.
Try not to burden anybody too much, you know.
Sure. Anybody anything to say?
Well,
Are these the same funding, like in 2015, are you using the same funding sources for this project? Is that kind of?
We're going after the same funding.
Okay.
Whether we'll get those is
Okay.
another issue.
All right.
But yeah, the USTA, because of COVID, you used to get a lot of money from them, and that was drastically reduced because basically the World Cup couldn't be held during the U.S. Tennis Cup. Northern gave us money, county's giving us money. We're doing fundraising. We have one of our members who put up a $5,000 matching grant.
Okay.
And the Lloyd K. Johnson is being looked at, so. And the IRRB, IRRB, I'm sorry.
Okay.
well, I guess I don't know where you all stand on it. I guess I knew when you asked in 2015 for the 2 courts, I guess I knew that wasn't for all of them. You know,
Right.
that at that point the back 5 were probably still in serviceable condition, but what's the condition status of the 2015 courts? Are they still doing what they're supposed to be doing?
They're doing really well, you know. They're in good shape at this point, yeah. Aren't any cracks in them. We talked about doing post-tension concrete, which lasts 30 to 50 years.
Yeah.
But
Twice
the
the cost.
starting price on that is, you know, 350,000, so.
And that would include then ripping up the entire court and
Yep.
re-pouring everything.
Right, that's a big job. And they also have to take down the fences and all this. This can be done without taking down the fences and laying out the material, yeah.
I was gonna ask, you know, is this one of those deals where we do sort of a mirror with the county? But when I look back on the prior financing, it looks like the county put considerably more money.
Well, that's because we don't own it. I mean, that's.
Well, right, but we have these kinds of weird things with a lot of stuff, right? The library, whatever, right? And
Yeah, you said it.
so I just trying to figure out how we set the money part. So they've always, well, not always, but most times looks like they've given considerably more money.
If it were only 1999, you could build 2 courts for $67,000, right?
Right,
Yeah, let's
right.
go back 22 years. And that's the concrete that's on it right now, or the paved surface.
It's
that's
asphalt.
Asphalt.
Yeah, it's not a concrete.
Oh, shit, pave it.
We've looked at many, many different options for resurfacing. And
Yeah, I believe it.
we even looked at when they were doing work, we talked to some of the asphalt companies who were up here, you know, from away, but it just didn't work. I mean, a lot of these people, if they haven't done a tennis court before, they don't know what they're doing, you know. They know how to do a road, and so you have to stick with people who know what they're doing.
Makes sense. So would you assume that, so let's look at 2015. So 2015, the breakdown of percentages for that 133,000, do you think that, I mean, I guess it's pretty early in the process to say what you're expecting, but I look at these percentages and I look at, you know, a pretty good chunk of that coming from the county, and then a lot of the other fundraising efforts are one third of that amount of what the county's putting in. And not to say that the city of Marais came completely to the rescue with 12.8%, but I mean, what's the status of the conversations with those other entities, with the county and things like that? Have they given you a number, or are they just saying they're in, they'll support it?
Well, the county has, and they haven't given us a number yet.
Okay.
I don't know what the status is. You know, we have different people looking at different places. So one person's looking at IRRB and Lloyd K. Johnson, another person's talking to Northern, and another person is working with the county. So I can try to, I mean, obviously we don't need the money today, but I can try to get those numbers for you if that would make a bit easier to decide.
Excuse me. Is part of this then, does the city or county's commitment in any way influence your success of your other asks? In other words, let's say, does Lloyd K. Johnson say, oh, you know, where else are you getting support? Do you need our support to?
Oh, to clinch their support?
Like matching
Yeah.
funds
Yeah,
and kind of-
I don't know. That's a good question. I can talk to the people who are looking into that to see if they,
I just wondered if you know, if we need to.
it snowballs, yeah. Mm.
Or is it okay for us to kind of wait and see where you land and see what we need to do? Or is it better?
I mean,
to-
I
don't
think
know.
the last time you came in 2015, we were the last ones you asked, I think. Because like we didn't give you exactly what you asked for, but we gave you kind of a ballparky number for that. And
Well,
I don't know if
And that's the number right here.
17,000.
I think the one thing that if you look at the historical contributions from the city, I mean, that was the largest contribution that the city made in any of these was in 2015. And the missing piece from that year compared to the other two is there's no IRRR money.
Right.
And so, you know, I mean, I would say, I think it would be interesting to see who's can the tennis association be the conduit, or does there have to be a conduit for IRRR? Like, would the county be doing that? Do you know who's doing that? Because it has to be a,
As far as I know, Tim Scannell's doing that.
okay.
And he's a CCTA member, and
Yeah.
and he's helping us out with that. And he's also looking at Lloyd K. Johnson, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I would say that if there's success, I mean, because the other, depending on that, I would say that, you know, like the EDA also is a conduit, you know, not conduit's not the right word, but what's the term for?
That works.
Is it?
Sponsor
Yeah,
conduit, yeah.
for IRRB funding, you know, so we just applied for the EDA on behalf of like the Superior Cycling Association, just applied for a grant to do
Right.
rehab work on the trails up here.
Right.
And it's just the pass-through of the EDA, because it has to be a particular type of government body
Yeah.
that
Well, I
does it.
can check back with Tim
Because-
and see what he's doing. But
And I would
you know, with that.
maybe actually look at what, if that needs to be done, there's really good support and success with things coming out of the EDA. And if the to IRRR, I think if there was if they could hit their percentages like they were hitting in these other, you know,
Well,
I mean.
the IRRB in the past, it was kind of a funny story. I don't know if you know Rod Wanabo, but
Yeah.
he's an old-time tennis player, and he basically met one of the state representatives at a meeting, you know, at some meeting, and told them that they needed money, and that's how they got the $50,000. I mean, it was hardly an application at that time. I think things have changed in terms of how they
Yeah.
hand out money, but that's kind of how we got that.
Surely, yes. I think there's been more scrutiny on the IRRR in recent years.
Well, I don't think that I mean, I guess that I don't have necessarily an issue in giving some money. I guess I don't necessarily want to do the open-ended side of it, and I would say that I would try to, if we can come back with what it's actually the project budget is supposed to be, what you guys decide to go with, and it sounds like you have maybe a cleaner number than when we got this.
We have a clean number for that. It's right around 150,000.
150.
Plus or minus, you know, probably
Yeah.
5 to 10%, you know.
Sure. And, you know, again, I'd put, try and get what we can from the county, and also I would, you know, if you talk to Tim, or I can get you in touch with Beth at the EDA to ask about the process with IRRR, you know, just to see, and if there's a short, you know, fall maybe in there that the city can help on, I think that's the way I'd be, I mean, versus.
I'd be more inclined to do that.
I'd
as
more
well,
inclined
to see what the need is.
I'd be more inclined to take grants and, you know, those, you know, follow up Lloyd K, I don't know what Northern is. Is that like tennis?
That's a tennis
That's
organization.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
regional
Okay.
tennis
So,
association.
you know, but any of that grant money that's out there to take advantage of that, including IRRR, and then get the county's ask, since it's their property, and if there's something that needs to fill in at the end there, you know, come and talk to us, I would say, or even if you don't have to sit and wait out another 3.5 hour long meeting. This
We're gonna
is
put you
pretty,
first thing on the
it's pretty
agenda.
rare too that they last this long.
Yeah.
Well, I thought I was, you know, they talked about bumping me up to the first.
We probably
but
should
That
have.
never worked out,
We should
so.
have.
Turns out that would have been a good idea.
Yeah, I was thinking about it too.
And if I had been able to get the agenda online, I would have come much later, but I didn't find the agenda online, so.
That's my 2 cents, I guess.
So it sounds like there's an interest, but we want to know a little bit more what the gap is.
And even if that then is like, okay, this is what we got from our other funding sources, this is what we're estimating for project cost, and even if that's passed on and it's in to our agenda, and we can say, hey, we had this discussion with you, and this is what their thing is, then that's only if everybody is fine giving some sort of fund. It's just a matter of clarifying what that amount is.
I would like that. I think that'd be
I
good.
think we should support the tennis courts. I'm just, like you were saying, where do we fall in timing?
Well, I don't know if he needs a commitment out of us for a dollar amount, but I think that it's safe to say that we do want to support the tennis courts and the tennis association within our community. You know, we have developed a reputation for supporting you, and
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
we're still on board
Yeah,
with that.
and a lot of the people in the city use the tennis courts. you know.
True, yeah. I mean,
So does that feel like marching orders? Does that seem like that's, I mean,
Well,
it's a
Does it
pledge.
help?
it's
but
not
a-
clear that you have a commitment to support us, but you will wait and see what other people are giving in to
I'd say
the,
that, yeah, I get,
so you're not saying you support us.
I think we are saying we'll support.
no,
it.
I'm saying.
We just
from-
don't know what the number is.
I mean, we're not voting on anything right now, but my personal opinion is, yes, I will support your endeavor here. I can't say 15 to 20,000, I don't know, but I think that we've established a fact that we have supported you in the past, and I don't see any reason to change that. I think it's in our best interest to have a nice facility for our people that live in our city to use.
Okay.
So, I mean,
Visitors?
And
but it'd be
I'd say-
nice also to see what is available out there through some of these other funding sources, if IRRB's
Yeah,
still involved or.
recently, I got a call from Thunder Bay. They have 150 people who play pickleball there, and they wanted to have a tournament here with Duluth. And so it'd be like, you're talking 30 people from maybe Thunder Bay and 30 people from Duluth coming to play, so.
That's awesome.
You just want to be the champion, that's for sure.
Mhm. No, no,
Not that
I don't, I want no part of this, but I'm stuck, so.
Yeah.
Okay,
No.
we'll be in touch with you. Just
Thank
send
you.
your, when you get the more firm numbers,
Yeah.
get them to Mike, we'll get it back on the
And
agenda.
it really,
Okay.
if you need, or you talk to Tim and they need something on the EDA, we can
Okay,
at least,
yeah.
if we can help, I'm on the EDA too, so if we
Yeah.
can help move that forward, then
Okay.
And then
Please
bump
let us
to the
know.
front of the list.
Yep, and he's,
next time, first on the agenda.
First
right
on the
after
agenda
consent
next time.
agenda. Thanks.
You know, my
Good Lord.
typical is that if we've got visitors, they get to the front. Well, guess what?
everyone had visitors,
They were all visitors.
so, yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay, just kidding around, but
Okay, we're gonna keep moving.
Oh.
We have one more thing.
Well,
Well,
shoot,
two more
one more
things.
thing.
Okay, so, the bid results for the community connectors. So, Craig, I don't know if you want to talk about this or if I can just tell everybody they were really high, almost twice what we've budgeted
I
for.
don't think Craig knows anything about it.
Oh, you
No,
don't?
this
Talked
is-
about this.
This, we haven't had a meeting on this, so this
Oh,
is-
shoot.
This is the first time I've seen it. You've
Okay,
seen it.
yep.
You've seen it. You've seen it.
So the bids came in,
I knew bids
Almost
were
twice.
ready, I just didn't have, we had, that was before our meeting.
Yeah. And it's
Almost
bid,
twice.
right? We got bid, not
Okay, good.
bids. And it is quite a bit higher than the numbers we've been talking about in terms of what our budget is for this project. So much so that rather than think about how we're gonna come up with the rest of the money, I think the right thing to do is just reject the bid and
Go back
take
to
a
the
step
drawing board.
back and
Yeah.
then let the park board talk about how they wanna proceed, whether that be a different strategy of bidding, a different timing of bidding, or a different scope of project. And I think that's probably a long-term conversation, which means I don't expect to see anything constructed this year. So we're recommending that this one bid from Urban Companies for $515,000 be rejected.
I'll make a motion to reject the bid. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? It's a bummer. It really is a bummer. But
Tell you,
Um,
some feedback we got from some of the other companies was it's not the right size to come up here. The potential that we might deduct the arbor on top was a little bit too much risk for them to take. And then the biggest thing we got was, I don't have a concrete contractor that I trust to come work with me on this project. That was the biggest feedback we got from people.
whoa,
So,
weird.
Yeah.
no, that's not weird.
It's pretty, I'm not surprised. I'm really disappointed, obviously, but folks are busy, and although I hear a lot of folks are hungry, there are some specialties, particularly in this size, that folks are busy. And this is the sort of project where maybe local contractors might have been able to participate at some level.
Yeah.
They're busy.
They're just too busy.
So-
We have local guys that could do this.
I think so.
I think we do, I just don't know
Yeah.
if
So
they can
Foreign
squeeze it in.
that's the kind of conversation I think the park board can take a step back, rethink the strategy. Is there a way to rethink how we're bidding this that might make it more accessible to local contractors in terms of what we're asking to be done when? Or do we just need to wait till people aren't as busy, or do we need to rethink the whole thing? So we'll put it in their lap.
And who knows, a year from now, the way things are going, things could feel completely different.
They could.
It's a lot easier to find.
Any further discussion?
Nope.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Council and staff reports. Craig?
We had a Parks and Rec meeting last night. Talked about all kinds of things. You want me to talk about all the kinds of things? we
I'm
talked
sorry,
about?
I'm getting punchy.
Well, we
say
just
no,
kind of went
that's the yes or
through,
no
we just
question.
kind of went through,
Snacks.
Yeah.
Okay.
some issues, like, we're just talking about some new things, throwing around some ideas, miscellaneous project updates. There's been some work on a possibility of putting together a bike skills park up at the, next to the playground. There's been some talk between the hockey group and the county and maybe putting in some type of a pump track assembly type system that gets put together, is removed
Yeah.
in the wintertime, and
Cool.
there's some work going towards that right now to try to get something down, something else for kids to do up there. We had Linda that was at the meeting with Linda Pratt Simons at the meeting, basically to try to tie in on what we're discussing and what we're talking about and how that ties in with her organization as far as maybe what they can do for us, things that we can bounce off them, as far as, of course, they advertise for the whole community, but, you know, we're Parks and Trails, and we are representing everything within the county, and there was some discussion of, you know, why is this, you know, well, obviously, why is the city there? But the city's there because we're part of the whole community, and this is more of a whole community kind of group, and I think we're trying to establish a group that people can come to before they actually have to vet something in front of the county board, for example. Come and talk to us about something, and then we can bring it to the county board. Maybe it has more validity, more power, more emphasis, whatever, you know, and the city can do the same thing, coming to the Parks and Rec board. And we had a quorum, we had enough people, and this is like getting a little bit more momentum as far as people coming to the meetings. And this is the second meeting we've had now, which everybody showed up, and we had the DNR there. We talked about the trails and the conditions of some things within our county. As far as Judge Magney Park, not probably gonna be open this busy weekend because of some washout and conditions. Cascade, they will be open just prior to the busy weekend. And some work that's gonna be done on certain things that the water runoff has done within our community. So it's kind of interesting to hear about those types of things. I don't know what else. We're gonna go over our bylaws and review them just to get more brushed up on certain things. Other than that, we talked about the 1% tax. I don't think that's hasn't been acted on yet. I don't think they're gonna have a special session, I suppose. So we're waiting on that, and that's a pretty sizable piece of money that Linda's organization gets that can be spent maybe on more things than the 3% money can be spent on that they collect on bed tax. But we're hoping that gets funded so that it can be used for a lot of the entities that need extra funding, you know.
Yeah.
So that's about it. We talked about
Tennis courts.
all kinds of stuff.
You guys talked about the tennis courts.
We did not, huh?
Tennis courts, I was just kidding.
We didn't talk about tennis courts. We talked about the dog park, though. We did a little bit of talking about the Sawtooth Bluffs situation.
Yeah.
And, you know, the dog park was part of that conversation, and the parking lot, and the fact that the county is involved in their parking lot situation, and also the 5th Street. Now, is that going all the way up to the stop sign, that redo? Okay, so we talked about that next year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the schedule?
Yeah, so there's talk about how that's gonna fit with the dog park and, you know, access and.
Oh, you mean that stop sign?
Huh?
It's going up to 7.
No, I mean, it's going, it's not going
above
past,
7.
it's not going past 7.
Right.
Okay, I wasn't sure, I thought it was stopping at 7, and it is, okay, all right.
Oh, okay.
It won't be affected then, but traffic, we talked about that on the road, and, yeah, okay, that's about it.
Anton?
How long was your meeting? 3 hours, right?
It was long, yeah,
Yeah.
but we, you know, we're kinda new with everybody, and we're trying to, you know, it's kinda good, you learn a lot, the more you talk about all the things that need to be talked about, so, it was good.
Is that the curse of tonight then? You just
I
pass
don't
on
know.
the fun?
You know, we always blamed Mills for why our meetings were so long when he was on the board. Now I'm gonna start blaming you.
Although Mills is also on Parks and Trails.
He's on Parks and Trails?
So,
But he's not here.
good point.
It's not.
Okay, anyway, Anton.
The only one that I've had since the last meeting I was at here was EDA, and then we also did have Commissioner Sullivan and then Beth, the EDA, the director, met about, we went over more language conversation in the business park to residential, or not to residential, but to owner occupied. So Beth and Ann and I met and just finished up that language. I'm not sure if you've seen that yet.
Yeah, I've talked to her.
Okay.
It's not clear to me whether it'll be on the agenda next week, because of course, can't be a public hearing next week.
Yeah,
So either way, it's gonna take another month.
yeah. Yeah, which is, I don't think it's screwing anybody up or
No,
anything.
I don't
but,
think so either.
You know, I think that was it, that EDA meeting was now, it's like 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks, almost 4 weeks ago now. But that was, I mean, that's like city-related stuff, that's the biggest takeaway from that, talked about the golf course and things down in Lutzen, but that's it for me.
Tracy?
I have absolutely nothing except, this is really cool.
Ooh, now you made me think of something I pulled up.
Speaking of kids' parks
Speaking
and
of
fun
mills.
things,
Speaking of mills, these things are awesome.
yeah, we should have one of these in town for kids.
This is a giant trampoline that's in the ground.
We saw them all over Iceland. They were so cool in all the kids' playgrounds.
That sounds awesome. I would play on
Really
that.
fun.
We
You've got
need-
one in your backyard. I always think of the Simpsons episode.
These are like, yeah,
So,
for safety
What did you
conscious
think
parents.
of, Anton?
well, it just made me, it made me think of, I was thinking about it, Craig was talking, and I didn't say anything, but just about, to the parking lot and to the dog park, like that, just like seeing where that's at as far as like your side. I know I talked to you about it, but like, is that moving forward with
What,
the?
it was close to being on this agenda. I think we're really close to being done.
Really?
But not done, and this agenda wouldn't have been a good time to add that to it.
Yeah,
So we're hopefully gonna have something worked out with them in terms of getting them started on the property. But I think on your next agenda, there's no doubt we'll have the license agreement in front of you
okay.
for you to consider.
Because that was my only thing that I also heard feedback on that, was just, it's a pretty small project for the fencing contractor, I think, because they don't want the busy to start and have them lose that. So,
Mm.
I want to make sure that,
They have a contractor already.
they do,
Yeah,
but
I know.
I'm saying they want,
Okay.
the contractor's ready to start, but they don't
I
have
don't think
it.
their contractor's ready to start today. I think there's some,
Well, that.
we got
Woods-
some time yet.
That Woods is not ready for the contractor
No.
to start today, so.
Yeah.
I mean, for the parking lot.
Oh,
The fence.
Well,
that's, yeah,
You were gone, weren't you?
they have they have a contractor for the parking lot.
yeah.
Yeah,
the fence.
okay.
But you weren't here when Kathy came with the bigger thing of how they're changing the fencing thing, right?
No, I just, I was here when she was gonna combine phase 1 and 2 together.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's-
never mind, you
were
weren't
here.
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 I was here, yeah, okay. Oh, I was here for
Never
that one.
mind.
Okay, that's all? You're good?
I promise I'll be done too.
Okay, so yesterday I was down in Duluth at the Duluth City Hall for an event for the Campaign to Save the Boundary Waters, and spoke a little bit there about the benefit that the Boundary Waters have to our community, and so that was good. That was good exposure, and I believe since the last meeting, I had a post-board meeting, basically still looking through the appeals process for complaints against officers. So this is like what the post-board is focusing on all the time now, because it's been a problem. So, I think that's all I have. Anything from you guys?
Please confirm with us in the next day or two whether you're planning on attending the PUC meeting next Wednesday at 3 o'clock, when Simp is gonna be here. I see 2 no's.
I'm not.
I'll wait to hear from you later. We'll check in with Michael. Of course, it'll be taped, so you'll have a chance to review it at your leisure.
Did you say there were gonna be snacks?
Pie.
We can do snacks.
It's gonna be pie.
Anything else? We have concluded our business. We are adjourned. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.